James.
All right. What's up, everybody? How you doing out there? Welcome back to the show. This is last week's fight. My name is Thinker St. James, and today we are going to be going over every single fight from UFC 310, Pantoja versus Asakura, taking a look at UFC Tampa coming up next week. And to do all of that with me, as always, my co-host, my good friend in the Ohio player, and future slap fighting world champion, I hear, Chase Parton. How you doing, brother?
Dude, we are here. Another good weekend of cards and our card fights. But I'm just really ready to talk about this one, man. I've been holding it in, so I'm just ready to hear what you got to say, I think, too.
Absolutely. There's a lot to go over with this one. This was one that I thought delivered pretty well. We had a week off before, so we got a stream to go over our predictions for this one and kind of feel out how we thought these fights were going to go. I think that we got some of it right. Some of it was, a little bit unpredictable, but overall, I think that it pretty well delivered. What do you think?
Oh, dude, this was really good. There were 3 specific fights that were weird, but the other ones were okay. And then maybe one that I could specifically look at right now without scrolling around and say that I didn't like the people in it, but it was a finish, so you can't really complain too much. There was a lot of them.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely some weirdness with some judging, which of course we'll get into when those fights come up. If you are new to the stream, welcome, welcome. We are going to be going over every single one of these fights from 310. So if you have anything that does not pertain to the fights that we're talking about at the time that you want to talk about, throw it in the chat or bring it up after the rundown concludes and we will come back to it. But to get it started off, as we have said, this is Alexandre Pantoja versus Kai Asakura. That's 310. It took place in Las Vegas, Nevada at the T-Mobile Arena. Or the other way that you could pronounce that was Pantoja versus Asakura, as Bruce Buffer said it on the intro in the early prelims. Don't know if you caught that. Bruce was having a couple of pronunciation problems on this one.
You know, he's getting older. Can you blame a lot of these names? I mean, Pantoja isn't crazy, but like, listen, coming up on the first fight, excuse me, the first name is crazy. So I don't know. I would have been mixed up too, thinking that's coming up soon. So Pantoja, whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah. Kennedy and Chezwaku, I believe, is how he pronounced that, one of those names, which we'll get to in just a second here. And the other thing with this, of course, this being in Las Vegas, even in Vegas, never leave it to the judges, which, as we've referenced, will be coming up in some of these fights going forward. But let's get it started with the first fight of the evening. This is Kennedy and Chezuku versus Lucas Dresky. I believe that that's how those names are pronounced. You're going to be remembering one of them, I would suspect, considering that Kennedy just handled his goddamn biz. What'd you think?
Heavyweights, like, goddamn, they better be on the lookout. This is the dark horse right now. And And I thought it was a pretty good performance because right at the last moment, I said, you know what, round two is what I think, when I think he'll go ahead and finish it. And Kennedy started off slow, and I thought that was really good. He didn't look like out of shape slow, or like he looked like he had a good pace to him. He was just working to a good momentum. And then right at the end, he just put it on him and finished it. I mean, that was really just a really good performance to see because you knew it was coming.
And to be clear, that's the end of the first round we're talking about here.
Oh
So I
yeah,
mean, this is
exactly.
still
I was wrong. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, this was all of the assessment though is correct. Kennedy looked really calm and composed. He looks very at home at heavyweight, which is great to see. The only thing that was missing in his last fight might have been a little bit of body mass, but he's put that on too. So he's looking like a true heavyweight right now, and conducting himself like one as well. I mean, all of what you were saying about him kind of starting off slow, it really was like just the early parts of a regular fight where it's, feeling it out, getting the distance and all that kind of stuff figured out. But really, so when he actually landed the shot, it was a counter shot that ended up dropping Dresky. It looked effortless. It was like just one of the a couple of shots that he had already been throwing on there, but he packed a nice amount of power on that one when he was within striking distance, and it did the job. So, goddamn, I mean, this guy looking like he's the real deal.
Yeah, I mean, I said it. Waldo Cortez Acosta, he knocked this dude out. So the bar is not very high, but Kennedy did exactly what he did exactly what he needed to do. Loved it.
Yeah, absolutely same. And I mean, Yadreski also just looked like he was one step behind, which of course it was the first round of the fight, so you can kind of use that as a little bit of an excuse, I suppose. However, it's heavyweight, and you know that these guys are throwing out there to finish. I mean, going off of Kennedy and Chezuku's previous fight at heavyweight against Chris Barnett, not necessarily the greatest gauge of what you could be expecting from and Chezuku at heavyweight, considering how that fight ended up turning out with the injury to Barnett and all of that kind of stuff. But now you're seeing that he's a dude who can hang, and he'll get the job done early if you let him get his game going.
Yeah, I mean, for heavyweight, he does one key thing, and that is kick. A lot of them don't do it and don't do it well. Kennedy is very precise. He works a good game, and he sets up a lot of traps. I'm surprised he didn't catch him with a high kick because he can throw some good high kicks.
Long legs, yeah. He's a tall, long guy as well. So, really, I mean, the question that I have is, does this win make Kennedy a legitimate contender at heavyweight? Which I think, I at least from my perspective, I guess you got to say maybe one or two more fights, and I would say that he's in the conversation for sure, if not now, right?
I think that's what I said on the night. I actually hope that they don't give him like ranked fighters yet. I hope they kind of let him work around a bunch of slobs. Just prove that heavyweight has potential to be something more than what you're seeing. And then let John Jones and Tom Aspinall do their thing. Then Kennedy can come for a good run once they decide and they stop bullshitting around. Don't waste Kennedy's time because this is a good talent that's super young. Let him get some fights in. Do what he's got to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll agree with that only to the extent at heavyweight, because, of course, Kennedy's been around for a minute. I mean, he was doing his thing at light heavyweight for quite some time, so he has sort of proven himself in that regard. At least that he can hang with the big boys in one way, shape, or form. So I think that does make sense, though, at heavyweight to kind of let him work his way in a little bit more, not rush him to the top, because really, we'll talk about the main event coming up, and, sometimes getting rushed directly to the top, it does not work out so well. So, but right now, I mean, I just think based on what we have seen from Kennedy and Chezuku at light heavyweight and now at heavyweight, he's got a dangerous skill set, man. The thing that really stuck out in the Barnett fight was how good he is in close range, in clinch situations. He's very active at range. We just said, he's long. He's got long legs, so he can kick really well as well. It's like he's got a nice, well-rounded base coming into the division where there are a lot of guys who don't. So I think that with a couple of wins, really, he could start shooting himself up just by nature of getting some impressive finishes and just continuing a forward momentum of wins.
I don't want to be the one to say it too early, but just because he's effective with his kicks at heavyweight, I want to say Kennedy is starting to look, it's a rough comparison, but young John Jones, if he was a heavyweight, Kennedy might be working his way to a good little skill set. I really like what he's got working here.
Not dissimilar builds, I would say, if you're, with those stipulations, right? I mean, like,
Yes.
John Jones, heavyweight, all of those factors being as they are. I mean, I could see some, slight little comparisons for sure. I think like you said, it's a little bit early to be putting all of that kind of speculation out there, perhaps, but I do think that there's definitely a future for Kennedy for sure in this division. And I always bring him up, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but this is what heavyweight does. But I would like to see him against a guy like Jailton Almeida. I want to see what the high level wrestling is going to do to him. When he's in like some more dangerous grappling exchanges, like where his skills are going to fall in with that. But if he can pass a test like that, or someone similar with some decent ground game, then I think that there's really, not a ceiling for this guy.
I think the last thing I want to say about that is that he's cut. I mean, you just got to cut him at this point.
I was going to ask you what you thought the future was looking like for Dresky, and I mean, that's Dana said that. I don't think that it really makes a lot of sense if he's going to continue to come out here and just get taken care of very easily. We had talked a little bit about the juicing stuff in the last stream. I don't think that like you could say that it's like, oh well, he's off the gear, so there's just nothing for him or whatever. Like, I wouldn't go that far to like frame it that way. But I mean, if we're looking at the sequence of events, he gets off a cycle, starts losing really bad, and continues to lose. It's like, I mean, if you give him one more shot, brother, you need to knock it out of the park or find something else to do. I think it's really, unfortunately, the way that it's going here.
Yeah, I actually think I even overlooked that aspect. Is like he really is just going in there and getting knocked out. It's a round one finish. If that's what you're like racking up majority in your recent, it's like, brother, what? Like, you're just going in there diving, really? Like, gosh. So
betting against himself, perhaps. But yeah, no. So we'll see what they end up doing with him. But one guy goes on the upswing, and the other not so much in that one. So
listen,
quick and easy.
I actually want to add one last thing because you brought it up. Would he be above betting on himself or betting against himself? He's already popped for PEDs. I mean, you already got to listen. You can make more money doing that now. You might as well not even do PEDs.
I mean, generally I would say it's a laughable concept, but if you're going out there losing all those times and conceivably not really caring too much about your future in the sport, then maybe there's,
somebody's getting rich that he knows. That's just all I know.
Not a 0% chance, exactly. So yeah. Well, keep your eyes peeled for any information coming out about Dresky and any future rumblings about his sudden influx of cash after any of his fights.
Yeah, he goes and gets like super tatted and stuff. It's like, brother, you didn't get no bonus. What are you doing? Like,
yeah, well, I mean, really, he should just go back on another cycle, get super shredded, then get the tats, go over to BJJ exclusively, hang out with Craig Jones. You'd be right at home.
Yep, there you go.
I like it. See, we just fixed this problem for him right here and now. So good. We got a trajectory for him. Good on you, Lucas. All right, let's move on. Chase Hooper versus Clay Guida. As we had talked about as well on the last stream, this one pretty much went as we thought it was going to go. I mean, Clay looking like he's kind of on the back foot. Did not say he was going to retire, but other than that, we pretty much called this one down the line. What did you think of the actual performance?
Yeah, I feel bad because Clay kind of, when he walked off with his arm, I kind of felt bad for him. Like, man, this is an old ass man that we kind of just like really publicly like watched get like, I was almost going to say humiliated, but that's not really what it was. Chase Hooper had a really good performance. Clay held off for as long as he could, but Chase Hooper's just the man. I mean, Chad Hooper is coming to town. That's really what it is.
Yeah, well, I wanted to get this in early before going into a long and drawn out glazing of Chase Hooper. Can I please say though that Clay Guida, as one of the dudes who I would consider one of my all-time favorites, he showed exactly why that is the case in this fight, even in defeat. Even in defeat. He does not give a fuck what is coming back at him. He is always active on his feet, always in his opponent's face, and always looking for an opportunity for the shoot or the right shot setup. He is the same Clay Guida now that he has always been throughout his career, plus the age that comes with time. So I think that there's something to be said for that, and maybe that gives everybody more of an understanding of why I consider him to be one of my favorite fighters. This dude is frenetic and relentless. Even at his advanced age, he is that way. And with 10 plus hours of time inside of the octagon, I got to give all of the love and respect in the world to Clay Guida, who will still remain one of my favorite fighters, even as he continues this later portion of his career. So needed to get that out of the way. But that being said, I did have one question about Chase Hooper before going any further on him. Is it just me, and it very well might be just me, but did he look a little bit smaller than he did against Borshov? Because I thought that against Borshov that he looked fucking massive, and he's definitely bigger. You can tell that he has gotten bigger over time, but he did not look as big, or maybe I'm just misremembering or something else. I don't know.
I actually think that that's crazy that you bring that up, because I said the exact same thing on the stream.
All right.
I was looking at him and I'm like, dude, maybe he just had a great performance where I just remember him as just some fucking jacked dude, but yeah, he definitely looked like he like regressed. It was weird. Like, it didn't look like he like took a year off. He just looked like he was a year ago. Like, it was a weird, I don't know what happened there. Then this is one of those things, man, the internet, like, you'll watch this and you'll be like, wait a minute, this no way this happened after. Like, you see him like, wait a minute. Like, so craziness that you say that, because yeah, he looked crazy last fight.
Okay, so I'm glad that I'm not insane on that one. But I mean, regression only in physique, because Chase Hooper has really put all of the pieces together at this point. I mean, this dude's striking looked clean, not phased by any of the things that I just mentioned about Clay Guida, who was in his face for a lot of the fight leading up to the sequence that ended up becoming the finish. He locks in. He's finding the flow state really quickly now as well. And he also has a really keen ability to not only find the opportunities, but create the opportunities. And I think that that is what is setting him apart when it comes to the fights that he's been in recently. So we're seeing next level progression from Chase Hooper fight over fight, I would say.
I mean, this is 3 finishes in a row for him. I kind of forgot about the Jordan Levitt one. And this is Chase Hooper is legit, guys. I know we talk about, Charles Oliveira, but he's just kind of great so far. And at the age that he is, the skill set that he is, I still, in my opinion, I still think his striking is questionable. I see him doing a lot of not wild things, but it's like I don't know. It doesn't seem like he's as confident, like he's gonna knock somebody out as he is. I talked about that Borishev shot. Like, he just kind of lobbed that, overhand out there. But I think that's good, because I still think there's improvements to be made. Like, this isn't the ceiling for Chase Hooper. I'm watching somebody and I'm like, okay, you're great getting a first round sub, second round sub, three subs in a row. But I know that there's more. We can tap into something more, Chase, and I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, well, I mean, he himself in his post fight was saying that he's still in the learning process. He was, I guess, doing some training with Mikey Musumeci, recent signee to the, I guess, UFC Fight Pass to go fight in BJJ on one of their invitationals. Mikey, of course, coming over from one. We've talked a lot about that situation, but very smart of him to be training with Mikey Musumeci, one of the best practitioners in the world. Shout out to him for that. I appreciate it. And I mean, the improvements, if you're not seeing it in the striking, the ground game is just as crisp and getting crisper. That up and over toss that he did was so nice, dude. Good Lord, that he had fucking Clay Guida ass over tea kettle very quickly, and the chain wrestling following it was just really a nice sight to behold. The armbar itself was dead to rights. I mean, there's really nothing you can say negative about much of that.
Yeah. Another thing that is interesting to know. What was I? Damn, there was one more thing. I quickly forgot it because you were making such good points. Um, Chase he's just the man. That's I guess that's really all I can say.
All right, fair enough.
Oh
Then,
no, sorry, I
yes.
remember.
All right.
Before the fight started, they even showed a clip of it, and I was mad. I always do this. I'm mad that we don't find these little nooks and crannies of information. They grappled in some tournament, and Chase subbed him. Like I was like, oh well, we already know he's gonna win this. Like Chase is just gonna do it again now that we saw like that it happened before. So
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that actually. Yeah, I remember hearing that as well. I think I knew that even like earlier and like just didn't note it for some reason, but you are correct. So, yeah, that was a good indicator of how this one was going to go. And if he was able to do it back then, this version of Chase was, walk in the park level, really.
yeah, good point.
So, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, great win for Chase Hooper, and it just continues on, man. I mean, keep doing what you're doing, young son, because you are. I mean, what, like 25 or 26 years old? This kid is. I mean, he's so early in his career to be this good. It's going to be really nice to see him continue to progress.
Yeah, it sucks because that minus 1,300 tag is just, I mean, it's going to stay around there with these types of wins, brother. Like, I love it, but I don't know. I can't make no money off you, bro.
Well, I guess then there's the question, right? I mean, I would say that now he had a little bit of a rockier start early on, but he was so young. I think that with wins like this, especially with the streak that he's on, you got to give this guy something a little bit more to chew on, right?
Oh, yeah, he's going to introduce Ilya to 55.
Well, we have new information breaking every day, huh?
Yeah.
So, all right. Yeah, well, that's that fight, though. I very much appreciate that win for Chase Hooper and can't wait to see him continue on. Shout out to Larry in the chat. Congratulations on hitting on your parlays, my dude, and Beeb, of course. Let's move on to the fight that Mr. Parton here said was going to put him to sleep. This is Michael Chiesa versus Max Griffin. Michael Chiesa, of course, turning 37 on the day. Nice way to celebrate with a win. Did this fight put you to sleep, sir?
I think I gotta rephrase what happens when I have these fights. It's not put me to sleep or it's not piss breaks. It's try to fix the stream, which if you understand having our own issues over there. So when this fight
Oh,
comes
yeah.
on, that's when I look to the second screen and I'm trying to fiddle with stuff. But I will say I watched a good deal of it. And my I think I made the point that Chiesa's striking is so fucking bad. Like it just looks horrible. And I think I made the comparison with Aljo, and I think that's a little discredit to Aljo. He looked maybe a little better, even though they didn't. We'll get into that one later. But Chiesa, the way that he strikes, he just leads with these wild hooks, and it's just really, I don't know. It's just ugly to see. But he did get a win, grappling, and I shout out to him. I mean, Max Griffin is just not really that good. Sad to say.
Well, so, okay, with this fight, I think that this fight is a good case study, so to speak. So, what I noticed in this one is that Michael Chiesa really showed a determination to control the pace early, and he succeeded with that. One of the reasons that he succeeded with that is because Max looked very hesitant to engage in this fight at times. His corner was yelling, "Be first." He really should have followed that instruction because the fight got away from him very quickly. And why I say it's a case study is because you don't want to ever handshake with your opponent. If your opponent has a specific aim in a fight, you need to counteract that as opposed to handshaking with them and saying, okay, you can do that. And that's basically what I saw in this fight is that Max Griffin really just said, okay, if you want to lead, I will follow. That's a very poor recipe for going forward in a fight. And I think that's really exactly how this one ended up going, because by the time that Max realized what was happening and started to throw like very early in the third round, it was only a little bit, but early in the third round, he started to pick up just a little bit. It was already too late. And Chiesa, with the finesse on the ground that he does have, his ground game, of course, a lot better than the striking that you mentioned, able to make it effective and get the sub. So, and that turned out to be the first time that Max Griffin had ever been submitted. So chew on that.
And I think that is funny because I was about to bring up the favorable matchmaking that I believe we have happening when you get certain people like this. Because at the beginning of the fight, I saw Michael Chiesa warming up, and I said, "Okay, this dude has a gray beard. Like this is not what we're gonna see win. Like you just come on. This is a commentator with a gray beard. This dude needs to be shown what's up." And then Max Griffin comes out here and stinks up the show. So like I was gonna say favorable matchmaking. That was going to be my next point, but here you go. They gave him a man who's never been subbed. I'll respect. You are correct. So shout out to Michael Chiesa. I'll give you that one.
And I hear a lot of haterisms coming from you against Chiesa, and I guess maybe it's because I've been around a little bit longer with like seeing Chiesa, so like I don't see him that same way, but I just don't know where it's coming from. Why you hate this man?
I don't know if it's a recency thing because I think I sound the same way because my next comparison was going to be I think I sound the same way with Grant Dawson. Like
Very much so, yeah.
I think like maybe I just expect more from him. And like Chiesa, I think it's just way past the time for more to be done. And I don't know. So Grant Dawson, when he gets a third round finish, I'm bored up until that moment. Chiesa's probably the same way. And like I was obviously doing,
All right,
but
well,
I
I
don't
will
know.
give you that as an explanation. I think that is actually very well reasoned. So, kudos to you for that one.
Good deal.
All right. Well, let's move on to fighters that I know that you have more favorable opinions of in a fight that I think was pretty decent. At least for one of them. This is Joshua Van versus Cody Durden. What'd you think?
Well, I think that since I reached out and had Josh Fan link up, with the show that he's probably watching right now. So Josh, to you, I want to let you know that the performance you have was top tier. You are elite on the feet. And you know what you did in the first round is you showed him that your wrestling is good. Not just you didn't even have to try to take him down because your defense was just so solid. He tried his hardest, and I thought that was going to be the fallback for Cody after he got bombed in the first and second round. It's like, okay, now I got to wrestle. The fact that he came out wrestling, I think, is what doomed him because that second round was he cooked and there was nothing left for him. And I don't know if he doesn't study tape, and I apologize for saying it like that, but like Josh Van turns up in the second round. The fact that you were wanting to like be tired in the second round is like not wanting to, but that's what the reality came, and you weren't prepared enough, whatever that may be. And then you're more vulnerable in the time that he's ready to go, like in his mode. So the fact that he was able to just let that happen, I feel bad for Cody. He was able to he took a beating, but Josh Van is just that dude, and he just sets records. I'm sure this is probably like seventh in flyweight division for most strikes landed or something. Like he just does this. So that's
Actually,
him.
if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was second, or at least his second best.
No,
One of those
oh,
two,
this
right?
no, I know he holds the record. Like he's like tied for third for most strikes landed, but this is probably up there too. But I think that fight was like 204 or something. Like he was crazy.
But yeah, this was up there as well. I mean, his his boxing is just insanely good. I mean, like it is really a sight to behold when this guy gets his hands going. Um, I mean, I would say that in the first round, the striking was relatively even. It was still a little bit more towards Josh, but then there was the takedown and the ground control, which I think did swing the round for Durden. So I was a little bit surprised that there was one of the judges who ended up giving Josh the 30-27, 30-26 actually, which is like, wow,
Oh,
that's a
I just noticed that too. That's kind of nuts. Fuck. Damn, Cody.
yeah, pretty strict judging on that one. But I mean, like by round two, as you had said, I mean, it was just right back to the game plan for Josh Van. And I mean, and I had heard on the commentary, and I don't know if he was trolling with this one, but he had said at one point that he didn't train any kind of wrestling or grappling, that he was just training striking point blank period. And it's like, bro, well, I mean,
Maybe
thank
at
God.
a time, like
Yeah, I mean, like, but
yeah.
while he was in the UFC, so I mean, like, because
Well,
they
yeah,
said that.
'cause, like, his, like, when they like, just this year, like, at the beginning of the year was, like, his first or, like, his second, third, or something fight, and like they were just talking about, like he just started wrestling like 6 months ago or something like that. Like I
That's
don't.
what I mean, which is it's wild. It's
Yeah.
wild for two reasons. A, it's wild that you came into the UFC, the highest level of the sport, without any background in that. But then it's also wild that he has now, in that amount of time, gotten himself to a point where he is actually able to hold his own in a way. I mean, very impressive.
To be fair, though, I think it is a different level of wrestling that he would have had to face if he would have got the matchup with Ulanbekov. But that's not what happened. Cody Durden just happened to be the opponent, and we got the win. I would have been happy either way because I do like both of these guys. I flyweights, it's hard to dislike, but Josh Van, I'm really happy he came out on top because I look like I've been here. I've been locked in. Charles Johnson, shout out you for being able to finish the kid, but he's on the bigger and better things. So shout out you
Sure.
guys.
Well, and I mean, going back to your point about the Ulanbekov pairing, if that had happened, I mean, Durden is the guy who just had that like gator roll ninja choke not too long ago himself. So it's not like he's some kind of slouch on the ground either, right? You know?
Yeah, but I think it's just different types of wrestling. Like I think
Sure.
Cody Durden has like the American style. And Cody also got subbed to Ulanbekov, but um I don't know. I think Josh, I mean, that's just a different type of wrestling. Same thing if like Makayev, like that's just a different type of wrestling kind of deal.
Fair. Yeah, I gotcha. I gotcha. I mean, and the thing too, like you were saying about Durden gassing by the second, I mean, you never want to do the dead bug, Cody Durden. I mean, like that was really a bad look, just being on your back, limbs up multiple times in the fight. That's when you really knew that it was over. And Josh was looking fresh as ever, man. I mean, like he really, like the cardio was definitely playing in his favor. Um, when it was, especially when it's that apparent, you know what I mean? Like it's like you can kind of cheat that if both of you guys are sort of still neck and neck, but when one dude is battered up around the face and on his back with legs and arms up in the air, like begging you to come to the ground, that is not a great look, no matter what the circumstances are. So the one other thing I did want to touch on, though, and forgive me if Josh Van is watching, but this fight, I would say, is certainly a testament to the power of Bruno Silva, because the only thing that was missing from this fight was a finish for Josh Van. So I'm a little concerned about power in the hands. Are we thinking there's possible pillow hand syndrome going on here? What are we thinking?
Not gonna lie, we are kind of locked in because I was just about to say Josh Van is kind of, when it comes to striking, he's like what a traditional flyweight would be. It's just somebody who has volume, but not the power to just like put him out. Like having knockout power at flyweight is like rare, like in a sense. Like most of them do not have it. And Josh Van, he has the ability to put volume on it, but you can almost bet if it's a dude with a decent chin, like he's definitely not gonna, like Edgar Chavez is like an animal, so we kind of accepted like, okay, Josh Van is not gonna put him down kind of deal. But Cody Durden, he's also a beast and he got his face battered, but he had a broken orbital. It's confirmed, by him on Twitter or whatever. And that wasn't like the first round. So if you can't finish a dude with a broke face, I mean, I don't know, but I
Yeah.
think it's just Josh's striking. That was actually my point. Excuse me. Josh Van, his striking, he doesn't have like that. He doesn't like go through with his punches. Like he just like, it seems like he just like hits the pad kind of deal, and like he doesn't like like try to actually like kill somebody kind of deal. I think he's sparing them, leaving mercy. But as he gets older, I think he's gonna start to realize that he's not going to be able to go to the decision all the time and wait for them to, gas out so he can turn up kind of deal. Cause that's really been his kind of deal, is put on a decent first round, make it close, second, third round. Okay. Now I'm ready to go. But I think maybe we're going to see some extra stuff. Josh Van is really good. He wants to get that submission. So maybe there's an extra layer to his game. Maybe he's just bullshitting about the wrestling thing. Like who knows?
Yeah, fair. I would say then, if that is the case, then just be aware that while, like you were saying, that like the prototypical flyweight might not have knockout power, we are seeing it more and more lately, because we've been noting it on this show, when we're seeing it, and it's becoming more of a thing. So as he gets up in the rankings now, of course, I would suspect that now he should be ranked, or is, if not there, then I mean, like right outside of it. because that's what they were saying on commentary, was that he'd probably wake up with a number next to his name, which would make sense. That putting that power on is going to be what's going to separate you. So I would recommend to Josh Van that if he's going to have any shot that he could set up for being the power shot, throw it all into that uppercut, because man, his uppercuts are nice.
Yeah, and I think you made a funny point. It's like, oh, I think he's gonna, he's gonna wake up with a new number next to his name. They need to stop saying that because they know these motherfuckers don't ever update the shit. Like, hold on, let me just double check. Yeah, Cody Durden is still 14th. Didn't update anything, so they need to make a point like, oh, he might he can have a good weekend with, and then have a number next to his name. Be specific, you motherfucker.
Yeah,
Anyway,
good point.
so
Usually by Monday, the updates have been made. You're saying none of them have gone through yet?
no, I just checked.
Yeah. All right. So there you go. But okay. So maybe sometime this week.
Yeah, give it a business days. Come on now. Anyway,
Yeah, right.
Josh Van also said that the UFC did not allow him to bring his flag. I want to make a point on the show. That is messed up. I don't know what's wrong with Myanmar. I'll go out here and say it right now. Myanmar is a beautiful country. Josh Van, shout out you. I have a lot of Myanmar viewers that be stopping by the stream sometimes whenever you're fighting, and I really appreciate everybody there. Grandma Van, listen, I'm here for you, and I appreciate everybody there. We're on our way to the top, I swear.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked about the political aspects that keep people from having their flags in the cage before. Put that shit to the side and let these people bring their fucking flags in. Like
Yeah.
I think that that's one of the great things about the sport in general, is that it brings people from all over the world together, regardless of those kinds of circumstances. So maybe you put that stuff to the side and let these people represent how they want to, because Myanmar deserves it. Very,
absolutely.
not a lot
Good
of representation. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's my bad. That's exactly what I was saying. There's good representation, man. He's the only one. Like, fuck.
Right, exactly. So there you go. But good win for him. And yeah, I mean, well, again, this is just another guy that we're seeing kind of evolve over time and come into these next stages. So looking forward to where he ends up going. I'm very excited to see who his next matchup is going to be.
Oh, it's going to be good. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving on to Chris Weidman versus Eric Anders, the fight that finally took place. Of course, this was supposed to take place at UFC 309. Eric Anders had a bout of food poisoning. This ended up being a catch weight at 310 here, this event. Glad we finally got some clarification as to why this ended up being a catch weight. It was because both men made weight for the original fight, and when it was canceled, they didn't want them to have to stay in cut mode for 3 weeks, essentially, going into this next one. So I think that was the right call in the end. But so this took place at 195, and yeah, I mean, it was a fight for sure. What'd you think?
Yeah, Dana White said Chris Weidman needs to retire. I am gonna agree. I said that way long ago because it's just it's the audacity that he has to think that he's able to hang like right now. The confidence, and then the fact that he just gave up. Like, not just gave up, but just like got made look like a punk. And there was another person who looked like that later. We'll talk. But Chris Weidman, brother, you just probably weren't ever that good. And I hate to say it like that because I
That's
am
a former champion, sir.
I know. Listen, it was a fluky win. Listen, if Anderson Silva wasn't bullshitting, like, come on, like, anyway.
There maybe is a case there, but fair. Well, what I would say though too, when it comes to Weidman in this fight specifically, is that he did seem to just be making a couple of like less than high IQ decisions, to put it politely. I mean, he was just kind of conducting himself in a little bit of a strange manner when it came to his decision making, because Anders had some nice early pressure, but Weidman connected and dropped him later in the first round, and then just follows to the ground with him and does next to nothing besides a single elbow. I'm like, bro, you should have stood him up, or really, if you're going to go to the ground, have a sound strategy to get in there and do something quickly, because if you're following to the ground just to lay on him, why? What is the reasoning for that? I mean, like, he literally went down and just kind of like held position for a little bit. It was like, you need to be active with that, especially when you have the guy hurt. So that was kind of strange. And then, I mean, like, there was the illegal knee from Anders to Weidman. That was unfortunate. I thought it was handled well by Mark Smith. Really not too much to say there. Weidman comes right back after that, guns blazing. I was like, okay, that's a good way to get back into the action, but then ends up jumping guillotine and doesn't have it. What do we say about jumping guillotine on this show? If you don't have it, don't do it. And then that turns into the ending sequence pretty much. Weidman just starts eating shots to the side of the head from Anders, turns into more shots, turns into more shots. Anders gets the half mount, bunch more shots. I mean, like, poor decision making is what I'm getting at.
This is actually really funny because this is one of 3 fights on this card that ended from the ref having to just stop it because we were going to watch something for the rest of time that we were not going to want to see because Chris Weidman just stopped. Like, he just didn't want to do anything, and like the punches that he was taking, you can even hear my commentator like, they're not going to hurt him. Like, they're not doing anything. These aren't really powerful punches, but the ref's going to have to stop it. Like, he's not doing anything. He's not responding, and it was really funny, but like it was also painful. Like, are you really, like, this is what you're going to do at the last leg of your career, is like go out on TKO via ref having to say, or like, are you going to do something? Like, it's crazy. So crazy.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. We are clicking today because that is the absolute next note, is that this was one of the 3 mercy stoppages on this card, and I mean, Mark Smith could have let it go to the 3rd if he had wanted to. I think everybody had seen enough at this point. And you also bring up a good point with that, like, so regardless of just this fight specifically, right, where like those were the circumstances that we just outlined that went into this ending. Is this what you want the end of your career to be based on the last couple of fights? Even going back to the Tavares fight, it's like you come back after a devastating injury that probably should have been career ending. You're trying to make this work. Things are just not right. Everybody knows that they're not right for you. You end up in the fight with Bruno Silva. That was, now an indelible mark on your legacy. I mean, you're never going to live that one down. The double eye poke is there forever. Now you're always going to be Mick Pokey fingers to everybody when your name is brought up, regardless of the fact that you used to hold the belt. That's, you talk about recency bias. That's one that's going to stick for sure. So it's like, really, bro, I mean, like, that's, I think the big takeaway here is, it's like, I had said that the Smith Reyes fight, which we'll talk about in a little while, was like a loser goes home fight. This should probably be somewhat of that same type of situation. I'm glad it wasn't Eric Anders, because as we had talked about on the last stream, Anders kind of sorting his life out. I was glad to see him get the victory for that reason. But when it comes to Weidman, you're now writing a narrative that you don't want to define you in the later part of your career in this sport, my man. You really should go and self-assess if this is what you want to continue doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just really, really happy that Chris Weidman lost. Like, I really can't tell you. Like, and it was such a weird way to end. And obviously, we got to see it 2 more times after this kind of deal. But this was the worst of them. I enjoyed this one the most. The other ones, they were a little more painful to watch, I think.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I detect that same level of haterism as I was detecting with Chiesa, but I think based on what we just talked about with Weidman, justifications are there. So I'm not going to press you on that one.
Well, that's another. It's because, like, he's had, okay, so post leg snap, look at his career.
Right.
Like, as a new fan or somebody who would have caught that, they just turned 18 and then they watch for 5 years. Like, it's been, a handful of years now. All we have seen is this dude be on bullshit, get on the mic talking with cigarettes and alcohol on his breath, fucking dude. Like, I can't tell you how much this dude pisses me off. And like, that's what he's done. I have plenty of love for other like fighters. And it's not just because, because he beat Anderson Silva. Like, I don't even like that dude either, really. Like, because I didn't get to watch him. So it's really all you do is how you present yourself in the sport. Like, he's put this upon himself. Like,
fair. So. Yeah, with that one, fair. I think that a little bit spicy to say that you don't like Anderson Silva, but
no, well, I didn't mean that
out.
But like,
I
do,
I'm just messing with you.
Get it, you get it.
Yeah, no, I'm fucking with you.
All right.
But all right, yeah. So I mean, that's really all there is to say about that fight. It was an odd finish. It could have gone a little bit longer if everybody involved had wanted it to. I think everybody was pretty well happy that it didn't.
Yeah, it could have been ended like a couple sooner. So
Yeah, that that
whatever.
that that
We're grateful we got what we got there.
exactly. Yeah, that also is very true. So, all right, let's move on to another slightly frustrating one here. I would say this is Brian Battle versus Randy Brown. Talked a whole lot about Brian Battle being that dude. We very high on Brian Battle around these parts, and then Brian comes in missing weight by 4 pounds with literally zero justification. What the fuck?
Yeah, I don't know what happened there, but I can tell you he looked like shit on the scale. So I don't want to get I don't want to put the idea out there that he didn't try because my golly, it looked like he was drained to me. I don't know what 4 pounds looked like, but it looked like he didn't have any left in his face, wherever it's gonna come from. So that's my point. And if that's the case, I don't know what happened in camp. I don't know how you didn't get prepared to make the cut, or if this is just not a good weight for you. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and that's all true. I certainly would agree with that. I've seen the pictures. I saw the weigh in as well. Um, it's not that he didn't try. It might have been a bad cut. Like that element of it does line up. But my thing is that there was no reason for it to get to that point, even with the attempt. You know what I mean? Like he didn't have any like there was no no sickness or whatever. Like he didn't try to make an excuse. Not that there shouldn't be excuses. Of course, we would prefer that there not be. So I guess there is something to be said that he was just like, yeah, shit happens. But it is like, bro, I mean, come on, man. Like you're riding this wave of a lot of support, a lot of fan support for Brian Battle across the board, not just here. So for him to come in like that and then have the fight that he had on top of it. I think that, I think it was a bad look. We had talked about on the Paris card, of course, him getting booed and then having his mic moment, which was certainly a highlight for him. Here, the boos, I think, were a little bit more justified.
I think, if you want to go off the basis that Brian Battle is just a character in the sport, bad guys do bad guy things, miss weight, come out here, win the fight specifically, and then talk shit to the crowd. Like, and I kind of liked his post-fight speech. It sounded a little more compelling. It's all about the voice inflections. It's deeper than just the words. But you got to hear what he's saying, and I think he meant it. Meant it this time, and it was more of a kind of jokingly kind of thing, but it was more like a bad guy thing to say, like, I gave you my heart and that's not, and this is how you treat me. It's like, bro, you put on a questionable performance. But I think it was fun ish because it started off good, but then once they started doing the cage grabbing and whatever, not cage grabbing, but holding against cage. Sorry, now you can go.
No. Yeah, you're good. Yeah, no, I was just gonna say I didn't necessarily think that I was gonna be seeing a heel turn from Brian Battle. I think why it caught me off guard. Like always thought he was like the don't start shit but finish shit kind of guy, which is like I'm anti-hero. I don't know how you
Yeah,
what the proper term is for that, but I was just it wasn't something that I had on the bingo card to be like, oh, this is the dark Brian turn that
right.
we
Evil Charles Oliveira is what they call it.
yeah, there you go, so but regardless, as far as the fight itself goes, Randy Brown, I think should be more of the story of this fight than Brian. I think that all of what we had talked about when it comes to Brian Battle is an unfortunate taking away of the credit that goes to Randy Brown. He came out swinging. He certainly, I think, felt disrespected by the weight miss and wanted to make a point. In that first round, Brian barely responded at all. Like you said, it was a lot of clinching going on. Obvious first round for Randy Brown, in my opinion. Brian did turn up a little bit in the second. I think he turned like he saw that he was down that first round. So 1-1 going into the third, and then Randy threw some really nice shots starting the third. Battle goes right back down to the takedown attempts and doesn't get them. Nothing really doing aside from more wall install with that. His corner is calling for more points because they knew he was behind in the round. And then he just continued with the next to nothing further on into the third. How the fuck did he get this decision? It did not seem to be correct to me.
I don't want mean to interrupt, but I
Sure.
do want to interrupt because it may have been the first or maybe the second time that he refed. It probably would have already came by now. Did you see the noticeable weight loss from I forget, I don't know his
Keith
name off the top.
Peterson, yes.
Keith
Yeah,
Peterson.
absolutely. Yeah, people have been talking about Keith Peterson's weight loss. Apparently, it's from what he has said, at least, all natural. He's just 35 pounds down. I guess, we were joking on the watch along that he was on the Ozempic train, but apparently he just started to take better care of himself. He says he's got more energy. He feels more focused. Really nothing. It's kind of a non-starter. It's really not much of a story there as far as the, on the surface anyway. I don't
Yeah.
know if there's more to the story, but uh,
Well, I'll add this. He just needs to get a new size clothes. I mean, because the shirts are just way too big. But anyway, okay. So back to Randy Brown Bryant battle. Yeah, this one I can't really remember too much about it because a lot of it was just them kind of hugging for a second. Um, and and maybe I was trying to fix the stream at this point because I was like, they're not going to do much. Like nobody's going to get knocked out from this position type of deal. So let me go look away for a moment. And then it ended up being a long moment that I look back up and they're still doing the same thing. So shout out to Brian Battle just because I think maybe this was a performance that people are going to dislike you. And I think that was obviously his point. I don't know.
sure. Well, and let me reference this. Shout out to Realize here, saying that he thought that Brown won on damage. I would agree. I mean, I think that it certainly was that, but also I want to make the point, to that point, is that I think that this harkens back to the conversation that we had about Jose Aldo and Mario Bautista, like where it's like if there are a lot of even circumstances and then it's all wall install for a majority of a round in a 3 rounder. It's if it's 1-1 and then a lot of clinch work going on, then yeah, it's a little bit harder to say. And then maybe the clinching, the control ends up being the deciding factor. However, I think the difference here is that I think that Randy did enough outside of the clinch to have earned the 3rd round. So it's not apples to apples on that one. And I think that based on what Realize is saying, he thought that he won off of the damage. I think that is the striking that I'm talking about. So it would have made a lot more sense if Brown had won this fight, but this was just one of a couple of questionable judges' decisions, in my opinion.
Well, and I think that you need to look on the bright side because if this fight is you think a robbery and you think the other person should have won via damage, there was at least consistent judging when you get further down the card. So can you really be mad at the judging being fair play? Like I don't know. Like they're at least transitioning the scores consistently.
Sure. Yes, they're proving the never let it go to the judges mantra in real time over the course of this card. So this is
Exactly.
certainly one of the earlier ones where that was the case. This wasn't like the worst in the world. I wouldn't, this is petty
Yeah.
theft territory. This is not robbery territory necessarily. I do think it is solidly petty theft, but this as we go on, this will be peanuts compared to some things we'll be talking about in a little bit. So anything else on this one?
No, not really. I mean, what's next for both of them? Honestly, they got to face somebody like similar ranked again, like both of them, unfortunately. I think we need another performance around this level that's gonna make them showcase more where Brian Battle's not being a dickhead.
And honestly, like I know that this might sound crazy because this was not like a knockdown drag out fight, but I would be okay if they ran this one back personally. I know that that's a little bit wild, but just based on how both of them came in, I would like to see Battle making weight and coming into the fight like with the intensity that he normally starts with. I would like to see Randy Brown coming into the fight with the same intensity that he had, have that version of the fight as opposed to what we got in this one.
I don't know how often is that like the actual outcome where oh okay, they can run it back, like not just the next one, but even just a
No,
couple fights later.
Yeah, it won't. If it does happen at all, it will be a couple of fights later. But I'm just saying that if it's not the next, since it won't be the next one, I would be okay with it if both of them continue to win independently after this. Because
Yeah,
again, we've been talking a whole ton about Brian Battle. I really think that this was a very strong showing for Randy Brown, who I already was pretty high on coming into this one. I was like, I think that Randy Brown is going to prove a lot of people wrong. Didn't get the win, but based on what we're talking about here, I think it was a solid showing. And there's nothing to say that he doesn't come out and get the next win. So, with that in mind, I think that it would be okay if somewhere down the line, both of them continue on decent records.
yeah,
They meet
yeah,
again.
yeah. I didn't mean to try to make it like I was just I was thinking because like in my head I'm like who actually has ran it back like very recent after fighting each other, and the only one that came to mind was Ankalaev and Cutelaba, but that was like a fluke kind of finish kind of deal. So, but that I mean I'm not opposed to it. Like that does sound if one of them like threw out the idea and they agreed to it, that would be interesting. But Brian Battle seems like he like, oh, I fucked around, I got my win, I lost my purse, but like I'm on to next thing. Like if that's his mindset, like I don't think he would go for anything like that. But it is an interesting idea. I think a lot of times that would be kind of cool. Like sometimes fucking people like Borishev telling Chase Hooper, let's run it back. Like, brother, no. And then
Yeah.
you got Armin, not wait, no, not Armin, Sarukian, not Sarukian, the dude that Shara beat, he said it was a lucky punch and
Oh,
let's run
yeah.
it back. It's like, brother,
Petrosian. Yeah.
like no, like so I just think it's kind of funny. But this one, that would be interesting.
Yeah. Slightly different circumstances, I
Yeah,
would say for
true.
sure.
Yeah,
All
true. Sorry,
right.
little
Well, nah, yeah, I got you. All good. We'll see what ends up happening with those guys. But either way, all right. Let's keep the train moving here. On to the fight that was pulled from main card to be the standout of the prelims. For supposedly, this is Movsar Evloev versus Aljamain Sterling. Pretty much exactly the fight that everyone was expecting as far as the methods that were employed, I suspect. What'd you think of the fight?
You said supposedly the highlight of the prelims, and I think that's interesting to note. I don't know if we're on the same page here, but I think people have been drooling over this, like what they watched. And honestly, it wasn't even that crazy of performances from each other. And the reason is here, let me justify, is because they were both so good. You can't see great things without like an opponent that's like kind of slacking. Like they both were doing cool stuff and like having good moments, but like it was just those small moments. It didn't lead to like very large sequences, at least what I was witnessing. It was hard for me to say that this was like the most exciting grappling match. And I think also is because Movsar's like grappling is a little like he's like shout out North in the chat, Dusty. Mosvar is like a Greco-Roman wrestler, and like it is a different type of wrestling than like sambo. It looks different, and like they have different things, and it's interesting that that's what he does, and he's able to win with it. Because I don't generally think like I'm watching standout abilities. I don't know. He's just so well rounded, and Mosvar specifically. It's just hard to say that I'm watching greatness somewhere other than like a well-rounded skill set. I don't know. It's really weird to say that he's able to win like this. I don't know how to explain it.
Well, and yeah, let me back it up just to say that what I was getting at was that I the only justification for having this fight on the prelims would be to have it be a standout fight to, I guess, have more attention on the prelims. Like we of course were going back and forth trying to rack our brains as to why the change was made in the first place to have this fight on the prelims and Kron Gracie and Bryce Mitchell on the main card. So I mean, I don't necessarily think that it was, this like super high level feature as far as like entertainment value goes to the average casual fan necessarily. But I mean, I do think it was definitely high level grappling for sure. It was, but you're right. I mean, like when you have two opposing forces that are both really skilled in that department, you're going to get a lot of scrambles and a lot of compromise situations here and there, but it's going to be very much encapsulated that way. I mean, that's all. That's you're not going to get a lot else, and that's one of my bigger criticisms of this fight is that I kind of wish that Aljamain had been able to stay on his feet a little bit more because I think his striking was a little bit better. I think that's basically what we had said in the predictions. He was having a little bit of decent success on the feet. I would have liked to have seen him get more of that because of how even it was on the ground, even with the differences in the style of grappling and wrestling that they both have. Fucking Ray Longo and Marab both agreed. They were asking him to keep it standing. He wasn't able to make that happen, unfortunately, Aljo, that is. And I mean, he did get some decent pickup and slam situations. Almost got the power bomb. He was trying to go for the power bomb that he had got against.
That was more of a fucking pedigree. He tried to pull the Triple H shit off. Like, Jesus, man, he loves WWE.
Yep. There you go. Yeah. He's almost at it, but went for the modified. Got the pedigree as you said. But I mean, it was like all of those instances because I have heard a couple of people saying that they thought that this was Aljo's fight and that this was a bit of a petty theft. I was not furious over this decision. It was close. I could have at least seen a round going to, or I mean, a judge going to Aljo rather. They gave him a round. I think a split probably would have made more sense for this, that it was close enough for that. But again, I'm not in the same class as some of these people who thought it was a robbery or petty theft anyway. I mean, it was just Movsar doing Movsar things, really.
Well, there's two things that I want to point out. Is like one, I think maybe I was missing something here. Maybe the judges were watching because I think Mosvar won this one, but honestly, it could have went either way. I wouldn't have been able to tell you different. It was a lot of wrestling, but if you look at the striking numbers, or if you're a judge and is able to tell that Mosvar threw and landed 136 strikes out of 165, if that's the case, okay, that's why he won. But in my eyes, that dude did not throw no 130 something strikes. I ain't see maybe 15. I'm not gonna lie to you, like,
bro. I don't know how many fucking times we have to like look at these numbers and like think to ourselves how fucking skewed they seem based on what we are witnessing in the actual fight in the cage. I mean, like, I watch every one of these fights twice. I guarantee you that there was not 136 attempted strikes. I mean, even if you're counting like the quick motion feints as strikes, that is just ridiculous, especially if you're only counting 45 total lands for Aljo.
Yeah, it is
That's
crazy.
ridiculous.
So the second point I want to make, and I didn't even think about this until I was sitting here looking at Mosvar, and I don't know, it just popped in my head. I'm like, wow, if Ilya does vacate somehow, some way, Mosvar and Diego Lopez are going to fight for the vacant belt. I mean, that's what only makes sense right now.
Well, and I guess we should actually like address this very quickly. I know we're in the middle of the breakdowns here, but we've referenced it before. So just so everyone is aware, if you have not heard, Ilya Topuria has announced that he is planning on vacating his belt and moving up a weight class to go chase a second title. So not a double champ, but one belt gone, going for a second belt in a higher weight. So whether or not that actually comes to fruition, we'll see. I mean, this is just something he kind of threw out in an interview, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah. No official word yet, but that's what we're talking about when we're referencing that. So,
yeah. And so I think that makes perfect sense. We've been asking for it for a while. Mosvar and Diego Lopez rematch. I mean, it's the only dude who put Mosvar in compromised position. Arnold Allen, shout out you. But on the grappling side of that, he put Mosvar into really deep submissions and almost was able to finish him. You give him 5 rounds, maybe one of them's able to do it, but questionable cardio from Diego Lopez, we know now. So that is going to be something interesting to note. But I think it is time. Run it for that vacant belt if that's what Ilya wants to do. Even if he doesn't, while Ilya wants to decide and he's fighting Volk or whatever's about to happen, I don't know because Max is gone. We could do interim. I would be so cool with Diego Lopez winning that interim belt. That's fine.
Fair enough, because that would have been my question: is where does Volk fit into all of this? But this is all really breaking news kind of right now, so we really have to see what the actual truth of the situation is. But yeah, I mean, as of right now, it's not out of the question. So I guess, yet another wait and see situation when it comes to that kind of stuff. But anyway, as far as this one goes, that's pretty much all I had to say about it. Honestly, I mean, it was an interesting display of two guys who both really know what they're doing on the ground. I would have liked to see more striking, not just because it would have been, more fan friendly, but also because I think it would have been a better differentiator to pull one guy ahead more decisively, more definitively. But it is what it is, and Movsar gets his win, keeps his O.
I wanted to point out too that I have a great. I mean, like, not it's maybe not that good, but Mosvar is the Russian Peter Parker. Like, I know you guys see this, right? Like, it's crazy to me.
I Fair enough. Then shout out to him. And from what I understand, then Mary Jane is quite a lot younger than him. But we'll leave that alone.
Oh,
Hey, it's not my fault, bro. You should not. That's well. I'm gonna stop. But
yeah.
all right, let's move on. Keep it positive on the podcast tonight, but go do your own research on that one if you want to know what I'm talking about. Anyway, all right, moving on to Vicente Luque versus Temba Garimbo. Ask for a vintage Vicente Luque Darce finish, and ye shall receive. Chase, did you see what I was fucking talking about, my friend?
I actually would like to say I'll say yes, but let me point out that whenever the fights come, I feel like right before the fights, the last minute research that we are able to pull out, I think is so crucial because once I got on his record and I look and I'm like, Vicente Luque honestly has been doing a lot of good shit for a really long time. Like,
What I'm telling you.
if he does have a good performance, like it could be anything. He could knock him out, he can sub him, he can go to decision and win. Like, there's so many things that he could do. And it was so crazy that he wrapped up that choke and put Temba Garimbo to sleep. And listen, and he did his vintage little, his little bow, and that was really dope to see. Vicente Luque might be back, man. He said it himself. So
Well, exactly as I had said on the predictions episode, this fight played out exactly as it should have, dependent on Vicente Luque. I am glad to see that his issues and the things that he was dealing with health wise and anything else going on outside of the cage allowed him to still be at the level that he is at. He looked to be in vintage form again. And that was really the $1 million question. What version of him was going to show up? This fight was originally supposed to be against Nick Diaz. God forbid that had actually happened under the circumstances, because good Lord, that could have been even quicker. But this was the Vicente Luque of old. And as I had said as well, I'm not trying to overly pat myself on the back here, but this was very close to how it went down with him versus Chiesa, which I referenced. I was like, that's the type of Darce that I want to see. And it really was just lock it up, flip it over, get what you need to get done. And, I don't want to beat on Temba too much, but I also had said that I didn't really think that he was bout it like that. I hadn't seen what I, wanted to see out of somebody who like inspires me. Like, yeah, that's the guy. I had not seen that out of him. So this was a fight that Vicente Luque should have won in my mind. If he was able to, he's still able to. Very happy to see that that's the case.
I think that's the most crucial point. It's like Temba Garimbo, in my opinion, he looked very good in this last fight. Like, that was the best version that we had seen of him. And then this fight, I think, one slip up, it can change the fight. Like, that's really what it comes down to. And you also have to think, like, Temba Garimbo compared to Vicente Luque, the competition that they've faced, light years apart. Like, this is a dude who is a straight up killer, the silent assassin, like, versus the dude the Rock bought a house for. Like, that's so you can't really put too much on him. Like, in vintage form, Vicente Luque should smoke and blow him out the water. 52 seconds win. Like, that's it happened. So Temba Garimbo, if you come back with a little more training, I guess. I mean, I don't even know if I want to say that. It's like, just do the same thing, just have better instincts next time. Don't fucking put your face right in his fucking arms. Like,
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Like, what I would like to see out of Tempa Garimbo in general, and maybe this is just kind of a selfish sort of assessment here, but I'd like to see just like ferocity out of the guy at some point, because like that, I think has been somewhat lacking in a lot of his performances. He does not seem like one of these kind of guys that goes out there really with like a killer instinct.
Well, and so if you ever remember, let me think how many fights ago. It was 2 fights ago. He came in and got a knockout randomly. 3 fights ago, he got a knockout randomly at the beginning of this year. And like, he got on the mic and he was talking about how his coach lost his father and like that he was spending the time in camp with him rather than being with his
Yes.
father. And like, so it is really one of those dudes where his emotion does kind of play a big part, it seems. If he just comes in coasting, he's gonna go to decision. Like, what reason does he have to hurt somebody? He seems like a real nice guy kind of deal. I don't know.
For sure. Well, and you make a good point. Yeah, I do remember the post fight that you were talking about there, and it's like, look, hopefully it would be under better circumstances, but if you can channel a little bit of that type of intensity, I think it could go a long way. Now, I mean, you got to keep it under control, especially over a vet like Vicente Luque. But I think that there is something to be said for having that like go out there with a definitive like fire in your belly that would be good for him.
Yeah, 100%.
So, all right. But yeah, Vicente Luque back in the win column. Definitely love to see that. All right. Moving on to Anthony Smith versus Dominic Reyes. I want to start this one off. I don't mean to bring the mood down a little bit, but I think it's important to mention that Anthony Smith, his best friend and mentor, his name was Scott Morton, passed away unexpectedly of a heart attack just a few weeks before this fight. This had been this is a person that had been in Smith's corner for 57 of his 58 fights, and unfortunately casts a tremendous shadow over this fight. So I did not hear that when we were doing the watch along. I was doing it with Vitz King. We were dealing with technical problems and all kinds of other things. I was not aware of that. So anybody else who was not aware of that and saw this fight and was like, wow, Anthony Smith really just was not in this fight, there's good reason for that. There's also a really good article that was posted about this on UFC.com, actually. I posted it on Twitter. You can check that out at Yama Show. There's a link there if you want to read that. I would encourage you to read it. It's a good read, and it's a tremendous loss. So, my heart goes out to anyone who knew and loved Scott Morton, because apparently he was pretty big in the Nebraska MMA scene. So anyway, just wanted to get that out of the way first. We can talk about the details of this fight, and it was certainly an unfortunate one for Smith in more ways than one.
Yeah, now you make me feel bad because I had a lot of funny stuff that I wanted to say
I
about.
know, because if it was not for that, it was somewhat of a memeable fight,
Yeah, well, I mean, I wouldn't even say that. I mean, it was a typical Anthony Smith fight, which is honestly, you bring up, the performance, and leading factors for the performance, but this looked like vintage what I know of Anthony Smith. I mean, end up in a ball and just hold your hands over your head, hold on to their leg, maybe even. Um, I you know, I don't mean to like now I feel bad now, but like I don't mean to say it, but like, bro, if you just get paid to get beat up, like I know you, and what I think is funny is like I even defended him after it when he was putting down the gloves or whatever, and he's like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, stuff like that. Maybe circumstances are probably reasons for that, but I even said like, bro, like just 2 fights ago, you subbed an up and coming prospect in the first round. Like it's there, like you could do something. There's no reason for you to feel bad that you got knocked out by Dominic Reyes, but there is if you're just gonna sit there and get cowered over. It's I don't know.
Well, that was the note. Shout out to Toby, who was in the chat during the watch along, saying, "How bad is Vitor Petrino now?"
Look at Larry, bro. He knows. Look like prime Anthony Smith. Exactly. Exactly. And I feel bad too, is because Anthony Smith is one of these dudes that has a nickname that just like it plays a part. Like when you're doing good, it's like, man, that's Lionheart. But then when you're losing, it's like, man, this is the fucking Lionheart, huh? The fetal position, huh? Like, so I don't know.
Well, I mean, look, you know, I want to try to keep it in perspective as well. But when he's dropping his hands like he did, and then just taking 700 unanswered strikes directly to the face, I mean, like the visual alone was like, man, the commentary was even saying it's like he's taking shots just to feel something, which is like, oh, that is just, it's heartbreaking in the circumstances, but it's also, again, it's like it's memeable in the sense it's like, bro, like put your fucking hands up, come on, do something.
Yeah.
So let break it down just a little bit here. I do think that you could maybe not in the very start of the fight, but definitely throughout the course of it, you could see that Anthony Smith was not like 100% there. He looked like he was locked in for a good portion of it, but I could kind of tell he was wearing the weight, especially on the rewatch, knowing the information that we just went over. And I mean, even though he didn't look super terrible early in the fight, I really do think that once Reyes started landing, he just kind of checked out. And that's where he drops the guard, starts eating heavy shots, and it's all over his face as he walked back to his corner. Like there was it's a great shot. I mean, it's an unfortunately telling shot, but like right when they went to commercial break, it was just a front on shot of Anthony Smith, and his facial expression it told the entire story. Like, encourage you to go back and freeze frame that. I should have screenshotted it, but it was just like, yeah, I mean, this is a guy who's he's not with it. And then, I mean, really, he in the second round just overcommitted to that takedown. He's holding on to the leg and just ends up paying dearly for it with the elbows. This is the second of the 3 mercy stoppages that we had for this card.
Yep, that was exactly my next point. No, this is 2 of 3 where the ref had to like audibly, whatever the word is, he had to just like say the fight's over. It didn't have to just like separate them and like, no guys, no, stop, don't kill him. Like it's just like, all right, just go, just get it up, just come on, just get off him, like it's over, bro. And Anthony Smith, and I think Dana also said that he should retire, and that's probably exactly what's going to happen. It's probably about time, and I've said that before, but honestly, at this point, I feel a little bad. I would love to see Lionheart back in here one more time to get beat on, probably.
Jeez. Well, they did do the interview after the fight, asking him if it was time to retire, and it did sound like he was coming around to the idea of it. He definitely sounded defeated in more ways than one after this one. You can't really blame him for that too much when it came to this fight specifically. It would probably be appropriate at this point. It probably would have been appropriate 2 or 3 fights ago for him to retire. So now even more so. If that's what he decides to do, it is, I think that would absolutely be a fair thing to make happen for himself, just so that he's not put into these compromised positions over and over again. But the other thing I did want to mention, because I think the story of the fight obviously is Anthony Smith when it comes to this stuff, but we also forget when it comes to Dominic Reyes that, like, with the losing streak, Reyes was only 13-4 coming into this fight, which is not the worst record in the world. I mean, granted, all of those were knockouts when the post John Jones losing streak, but I mean, I think that it was somewhat foolish to count him out solely based on the losing streak, because he is a pretty effective striker.
Yeah, I think that is good to note, is like, which is crazy because he's kind of old. Like his record is like so little compared to somebody like Anthony Smith, who's only a few years out from him, kind of deal. But Dominic Reyes, I mean, like you said, at one time he was, I mean, Anthony Smith, of course, too, was at the top of their game, facing the best of the best of that division. But if I think, who said it in the chat, I don't think Reyes will win another fight. Realize.
Yeah, I was gonna
I
highlight that.
think you're probably right, unless they keep giving him favorable matchups. But Anthony Smith is kind of high in the rankings. Like you can't really pick too much of a favorable matchup for him at that point. He's already high enough. Somebody's going to come around, and it's literally going to be the same people that already knocked him out. Like so.
And, look, like as I was kind of alluding to there, I mean, the striking of Reyes is not bad, all things considered. So, I mean, depending on the matchup, I think that there is still potential for him to get another win. I don't think that he's completely someone to like write off like entirely at this point. Is he a guy that'll probably be spotty? One of these dudes that's just going to kind of hover in the lower portions of the rankings. I'd say that that's more of a fair assessment, but who knows? I mean, there could be a resurgence here. Hey, the run starts now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if Tony Ferguson's can start tomorrow, Dominic Reyes, you could have started on Saturday, man. I'm ready.
Yeah. So, as I had mentioned, kind of a bit of a downer, all things considered, when it comes to the Smith side of things. But good win for Dominic Reyes, because really, he did exactly what he needed to do. He struck and struck and struck until the ref stopped the fight. That's what you're supposed to do.
And if you want to give a favorable matchup that's kind of risky, moving forward for Dominic Reyes, Volkan Oezdemir, I mean, he already faced him. There's a lot of people that he could rematch, like at this weight. I'm
Sure.
interested.
There you go. So yeah, I think that's actually a fight that makes a lot of sense, really.
Yeah, I
You
mean
know,
that, or Jan can come out of retirement. I know he has news already coming out, but Yuri, I mean, once you start getting, like I said, Anthony Smith was decently high in the rankings. This was kind of just like a fan service fight at a point. It's like these dudes haven't fought yet. Why not throw them together? They're old, so it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Well, I had said that this was the loser goes home match, and it would appear that Anthony Smith might be going home. So if that's the case, then, good on you for all of your time in the octagon, sir.
Yeah.
But all right, let's move on to main card here. This was so bad. This is Duho Choi versus Nate Landwehr. Wowzers. This was, I kept repeating on the watch along, this is so bad. Nate the Train got ran the fuck through by the best version of Duho Choi since he faced Cub Swanson.
Yeah, it honestly, and I actually respect Nate for his response after the fight. I'll start with that. He basically said like because of course this is the third fight where the ref had to stop it because nothing was going to change, and we as the fans did not need to see it for another however long. And Nate basically said like I wasn't gonna get out of there. The ref, he made the right call because I was just gonna be stuck. I was trying my hardest, guys. I swear. And you could see it, like you can actually hear him in the broadcast, like he's like like trying to struggle out of the crucifix, and like it's just not working. And I feel bad because man, I really thought you had it. I really thought this was going to be on the feet, and I thought your grappling was going to be a lot better. But Duho, holy shit, this dude is, bro. I said it. And in terms of like his stand up and his striking, it's like he's an animal. Like he really is kind of a tank. But his grappling and his mindset on how to win a fight, I mean, he just did it. I can't really say too much else. Like, shout out Nate for taking the loss like a champ. I want to actually shout out Cody Durden. I know that was a while ago. He took his loss like a champ. He said fair and square. Josh Van won. So Nate the Train, shout out you for being just a respectable guy. I mean, that's really what we love from you.
Yeah, and that was going to be the follow-up point too. In general, with Nate, he seems like a really he was kind of like a slightly memeable guy. He's got his meme quotes and all that. But you dig down, and Nate the Train is just a solid individual in general. He's a thoughtful fighter and a well level-headed person. I got a lot of respect for Nate and the way that he conducts himself. No pun intended.
And I
Yeah.
actually want to add one more thing. He looked like he took the loss hard in the moment too. Like when the
Yeah.
fight was over, you could tell that he was so frustrated at himself. Like I couldn't get out of that. Like, come on. Like I fucked up type of deal.
Well,
So
I think that the real fuck up for him it's a two-prong fuck up. One is just the fact that he is facing Duho Choi, who looked superb. I mean, this is absolutely like talk about a vintage performance. This guy, like, he leveled up in a way from already being amazing to just this is like over 9,000 version of him now. But so that's, so not recognizing that was what was coming back at you. I mean, of course he couldn't have before the strike started, but the more major fuck up was right at the beginning of the fight. Nate runs right the fuck up to Duho Choi and just stands in front of him. Choi, this is another version of what I was talking about with the Michael Chiesa and Max Griffin fight. You cannot handshake your opponent. If you're going to run right up to an elite striker and stand there and not throw anything, then Duho Choi says, all right, I'll do that instead. You cannot handshake your opponent.
Dropped him to a knee at one point too, I believe.
Sure thing did.
Yeah, his striking looked really crisp. And Nate, and it's crazy because Nate has he has a very high guard and he keeps his hands very high, right in front of his face. But Duhu immediately just cracked him right with a stiff jab. And I was like, well, he just broke his fucking guard like off the first punch. Like, come on, Nate. Like, what? And so Nate's like, trying to get it back, and he's like resetting, and then boom, he's getting popped again. Okay, he starts reset, boom, he's getting popped, and then it just starts adding up. Like he just never really got his rhythm, which is crazy because, like you said, he just walked up and like he was confident. Like I'm just gonna walk up and I'm in front of him, but that just didn't fucking work. So
No, yeah, and we're mind melding 100% because that's exactly what I was thinking too. Is the fact that Duho Choi, it's not only it's the holy trinity with this guy. It's speed, power, and accuracy. And for him to recognize that the guard was extremely breakable, because you're right. Nate he does the guard where it's basically his hands are almost touching his head, like
yeah,
it's like elbows out, fists like kind of locked, in like a line right across the forehead. So like he had an opening right up the center, and the uppercut was there for him as well, for sure. So it's like he recognized all of that and laid it on with just every one of those metrics that I just laid out 100% flawlessly. I mean, it's like the early power of Duo Choi caught Nate off guard, and then it was just all Choi after that. I mean, his boxing is just such next level stuff. You pair that with the wrestling that you had mentioned, which was a little bit unexpected, but absolutely, of the caliber that you need to have to be hanging with the big boys as he is. I mean, like this guy is evolved, man. I mean, this would be the third Mercy stopping.
So I think that's another great point you bring up is like his evolution. I obviously wasn't here for it. I don't know what Duhu and Cub Swanson was like live. I still haven't actually got around to watch it. But anyway, different story, different day. On the commentary, DC, and I forget, I think it was DC and whoever else was there, they were even surprised. Like they're like, Duhu Choi, he doesn't get submissions. He's never had one. I mean, but he might get one right now. I mean, shit, I don't know. Like that gave me a good that I liked hearing that. I was like, damn, like we really don't know what this dude's capable of. He's really in new form. Like he's
Sure.
cooking.
Yeah, and I thought it was funny in his Octagon interview, saying, "Oh wow, your wrestling, your grappling, so your ground game is improved so much." He's like, "Yeah, well, I mean, I've been in the UFC for 10 years, kind of have to know how to do that stuff." It's like, yeah, good answer. Yeah, no, I was also wondering where Duho Choi had gone for so long. Turns out that he was doing his mandatory military conscription, so good reason for him to be away from the game for a little while. I guess that I was not aware that that was a thing in Korea, but apparently that is the case. Mandatory military service. So good on him for going to serve his country and coming back solid as ever, and also doing it for his new little baby that he's got on the way. So congratulations to him for that. That's always nice to get a victory.
And I don't know
Something
if
like
you
that.
listen. I don't know if you listened to his post-fight speech. It was obviously in Korean, but did you know that Bryce Mitchell translates perfectly? Just Bryce Mitchell, and it's like, okay, I know exactly who he's calling out. And then the translator gets on, and then you're like, Bryce Mitchell, and he's like, oh yeah, okay, I know, I got him. He's good. I heard him. So it's kind of
Yeah.
fun.
Yes, I did. I did pick up on that as well. That was pretty funny. And then, yeah, the only other note that I have, and this is just a general note for all fighters out there, please take heed of this. You get an automatic point deduction from Thinker St. James anytime that you walk out to AC/DC or the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Don't do it. Nate jinxed himself. No AC/DC, no Red Hot Chili Peppers. And I like both of those bands, but they are played to fuck. Do not walk out to those bands. Off my soapbox.
And going into the next fight, you bring that up because I think the next guy was the likely victim to play some really cliche song. But Bryce Mitchell going against Crone Gracie. Bryce Mitchell ran out to Cotton Eye Joe, which was absolutely great. One, it wasn't just epic because like I the song annoys me from childhood, but it was epic that he ran out to it so it didn't even play. Like you didn't even get to hear the shit too much just because like it was just over by the time he ran out to the ring. It's kind of funny.
Hell yeah, brought me right back to the skating rink, man. The Cotton Eye Joe, loved that. See, there you go. That is a good selection. That is what got Bryce Mitchell this fine win. Bryce Mitchell versus Gracie. That's what we're talking about right here now. And yeah, I mean, I think that he did channel that energy for sure.
I want to make a good point too. Is like I think after hearing Bryce Mitchell's, we're going to get into the fight, guys. Don't worry. After hearing Bryce Mitchell's post-fight speech, I think the UFC realized, like, they're actually smart sometimes. I think they realized people will pay to hear what he was going to say on the mic. That's why they moved him. Nobody's going to pay extra for Aljo and Mozart, but to hear what Bryce Mitchell's going to say live on air, oh, we got to see what that guy's got to say. Like, I think they know. And it's perfect because this wasn't even like one of his like crazy speeches. This was actually one of those moments where you realize like Bryce Mitchell is a fucking cool dude. He got on there. He said, I want to apologize to Joe Rogan to your face like a man. I called you stupid. You're not stupid. I know you're not stupid. And I love that part. He's so funny because I think they also noted that Joe Dirt was his favorite movie. And you can 100% tell that is exactly who this dude is. So, oh my goodness. I
They
love Bryce
absolutely,
Mitchell.
yeah, they absolutely did do that, and yes, you are correct. He did that as well in the post fight interview. All accurate statements. Bryce Mitchell, I've said it time and time again about Bryce. He is a crazy man, but he is a really good-hearted individual as well. And I'm a huge fan of Bryce. I for all of the nutso things, this was the battle of the flat earthers here. Of course, there was a little bit of a hubbub about this in the Discord. We don't have to get into the details of all of that with the extremities of that odd debate, but both of these gentlemen with some I don't know, slightly off center points of view, I guess you could say. But for all of the crazier things about Bryce, and I actually maybe at some point I got to like sit down and finish the script for it, because I was actually going to do an entire video about Bryce specifically for this reason. Because Bryce, I think that if you go back all the way back to The Ultimate Fighter, he was a sweetheart on that show as well. He is just a very solid, kind-hearted, thoughtful individual with some outlandish ideas, perhaps, but underneath it all is just a really, really quality guy. So it was good to see him get the win over Kron, who, I mean, not that he's a bad guy or anything. I'm not trying to make that equivalency, but I'm just based on how he performed, I think that we were all kind of happy.
You guys got to understand, and we may talk about it, or we may have talked about it before, but it's when the idea meets expectation. Bryce Mitchell doesn't just come out here and have a decision with Chrome Gracie. And I know that's what you were thinking, and I'm gonna break it down why it was perfect. Okay. We always hate these guard pullers, these Imanari Rollins, we had to see it for 3 rounds to understand the recency of how much we hate it. And then Bryce Mitchell had to shut that shit down. He had to show Cron Gracie how flat that fucking earth actually is when he put him on his back. First off, when he framed him and dropped him on his head, which was amazing because it clearly stunned him. Like, he was out of it at that point because the elbows that Bryce landed right after, he had no reason to even think that nothing was going to happen. He was laying there and just got smashed with 2 quick elbows. Keith Peterson, I believe it was, stepped in. Bryce Mitchell, the fucking man, gets out, gets on the mic, does his thing. Like, he just has it all. And the camo shorts, like, come on. Like, it's the story, it's the hero, the man, the myth, the legend. Bryce Thug Nasty Mitchell. He's just that guy, man. I loved this performance. Having the gif of him slamming and elbowing Cron Gracie, it probably will live in my head forever.
Absolutely. And, on the other side of the coin with this whole thing, of course, Bryce glazing aside, Cron Gracie has not learned a fucking thing. I think that is a big point to make here. The definition of going to the well one too many times. And if you are a one-trick pony in that regard, getting caught is what should happen. So I was very glad to see, exactly as Chase just laid out there, that, Bryce started to recognize, because there was that time in the second round where it got a little hairy for Bryce. I mean, that armbar was almost there. I mean, he had to do some quick thinking to get himself resituated so that he didn't land in it after 2 rounds of basically the same type of situation happening to him with the guard pulling. But that third time, you can't go back to the well every single time. It smacks of Ilya versus Ryan Hall, where, you go back one too many times, you pay the price, and that's exactly what we got here. So, and this is coming from a guy, Kron Gracie, who has done that time and time again in these fights. Get this guy out of here if he's going to continue this method of conduction.
I actually think it was hilarious because when the Discord was up, so I had the little chat, and shout out Dusty in the chat if he's still there. He said that was the gayest way to go to pull guard, and I'm sitting here watching. I'm like, I've seen some very interesting ways to pull guard, but no, he actually jumped in Bryce Mitchell's lap. Like it was the craziest thing ever. And then I got to witness, like, because I'm honing in. I'm like, let me see this. Let me see this. Let me see this. Like, come on, I've seen a lot of gay stuff in MMA, but it was very questionable. And then to get slammed on his head, Bryce Mitchell, this is why he's on the fucking pay-per-view. We're never going to get that out of Aljo. We're not going to get shit like that. We're not going to get a dude on the mic who's genuine, who makes you feel shit. Like, this dude is here to fucking stay, man. Shout out Josh Emmett. I know you tried to fucking take him away from us. You won't. You will not. It's not happening.
The power of Bryce is too strong, brother, too strong. And of course, Bryce, one of many, many fighters on this card. This card specifically, Jesus was getting a whole lot of shine on the night, man. Like a lot of fighters praising their Lord and Savior. But I mean, of course, Bryce is just in his own league with that. So, I mean, Vicente Luque might have had him slightly beat, but, just because Vicente Luque is also very, very fundamentalist when it comes to his beliefs. But, Bryce is just in a category of his own in general. So, the only thing that's going to make America great again is Jesus Christ, as he said.
This is a really, I love Bryce Mitchell, man. Shout out him.
Yeah.
Jesus,
Yeah.
shout out him.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just real quick, because I did see it. Yes, to Anakin's point here, Ryan Hall definitely is better than Kron Gracie. Kron Gracie is not the caliber that needs to be in the UFC. He is skating by on the last name alone, and even his own family members, other Gracies, were not impressed with his performance.
I did see that on Twitter.
Exactly. He should not be in the UFC. He should be doing BJJ exclusively. Go and do tournaments, my guy. Go hang out in the same circles that DJ is running in now. Just doing the IBJJF or whatever. Any one of the high level submission tournaments. Whatever. Do gi, do no gi, do whatever you want. Don't do it inside of the UFC. It's not the place for you.
When you talked about Robert Whitaker, I know this is a crazy bridge, and you were like, I just feel let down about what he said. Like, I've been training to stop Hamzat, like, blah, 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 blah. Kron Gracie had his little run saying, I feel ashamed of my last performances. Like, I'm ready to showcase that I have, potential in this game. It's like, brother, you suck, and you don't, like, the fact that it was even an option for you to pull guard, like, you should have came into this fight knowing that's not how I'm going to win. Like, there's no reason for you to have that stupid shit on your fucking plate. And the game plan should have been way different. Didn't even look like, did he even throw a strike? Okay, he actually threw, it says he threw strikes. I didn't even know. He could have had no hands for all I know, but whatever.
Yeah. I mean, because the story of the fight becomes those situations. You know what I mean? Take out of the equation the fact that it's just extremely unusual for anyone to conduct themselves that way at the highest levels of this sport. No one is pulling guard like that. People will jump guillotine occasionally here and there, and we've talked about how risky that is. But I mean, there's no one that does it quite to this extent and this version of it. So it's like you take that part out of it, and the everything else just becomes like it's almost static. It becomes just like filler stuff in the ether surrounding those punctuations in the fight, because they become the entire narrative. So it's not something that is going to work. You've proved it to yourself now time and time again. I'm telling you, the only thing that I can thank Kron Gracie for when it comes to his time in the UFC is for bringing his boys to the fight in Tampa and him losing so that they left. And I got to watch Michelle Watterson and Joanna Jędrzejczyk cage side.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Listen,
that's
there
it.
You go. And to Anakin's point, it's just really memeable stuff. Like, you have one side of the meme. To Anakin's point, Kron Gracie puts his face in Bryce Mitchell's face. Sorry, I had to give it to you. So funny enough, this dude doesn't throw a single punch that's worthy of anything. But that's the irony of it. It's like you have one side of the meme of Bryce Mitchell, who's just kind of a guy that people speculate about, being a fucking whack job, and he kind of is, but whatever. And then you have the other side of it, of the dude who also is a whack job, but he just sucks at his job. So you got to be good if you want to be the fucking meme guy.
And that's just a point in general with any personality or just anybody who is in the sport, period, really. I mean, like, but, more so to the, when it comes to like the quote unquote, like big personality people of the sport. We talked about this a lot with Sean O'Malley. It's like, you can be the, multicolored hair guy. You can be the smoke weed guy. You can be the, tattoos and hanging out with rappers guy. Got to win your fights. It's the end of the story. So,
Yep.
all right. Enough about this, but shout out to Bryce Mitchell, as we've said. Good man, Bryce. Glad to see him back in the win column.
100%.
A person who did not get into the win column on the evening was Alexander Volkov when he fought Cyril Gane. What did you think of that, Chase?
I think it was a horrible judging call because Volkov, I mean, sometimes, okay, and actually, now that I look at the stats, I'll bring this up first. I think the judging was getting swayed by the commentators because plenty of times during this fight, they were gassing up Cyril Gane. Oh my God, he's going for the Von Flute choke. Oh, Volkov better be careful. It's like, dog, he's just got his arm there. He ain't even doing nothing. I don't even like after a while, I started thinking it at first. Like he did go for a heel hook and he didn't get it. And then he got him, like Volkov had him on the ground, and Cyril Gane is just holding on, like he's just laying there. And like the commentators, like, man, he better be careful. He's working something here. He might be getting. It's like, dog. At the end of the day, he wasn't doing a goddamn thing. He wasn't doing a single thing, and they robbed Volkov just for like the idea that Cyril Gane was doing something, but he actually wasn't. He was just holding on for dear mercy because he had a broken foot. And then the fact that he suffered that in the first round, and then, in my opinion, probably didn't even win any of the rounds. Like I think Volkov did a lot of good stuff. He came with the intent to win, like, and I didn't. Like I know we wrote him off, and this is another thing when it comes down to last minute decision making when it comes to these picks. I realized like Volkov wanted this rematch for a reason. He's not gonna come out here and get decisioned again for 3 rounds and like do the same thing. He's gotta come out here with a new game plan, and he did. Came in with the knee pads on. He was ready to wrestle. The fact that they robbed him, and even Dana knew it, so they're gonna make it. They're gonna make it right for him. But I feel like Volkov won this easily.
Sure. I mean, a lot to unpack there.
Oh yeah,
Definitely. No. You're good. No. I'm trying to keep the points straight here because I mean, you're clicking on all cylinders with all that. But yeah, I mean, I think that Gane did win the first round. I would give him the first round. I think that the wrestling was decent, wasn't great, but decent. The gassing up on the commentary probably was a little overblown, but I'd say that it was enough. It was enough for round one to be swayed his way. However, one glaring point in there was the fact that you were talking about the heel hook situation there. He should not have been able to get into that position, considering that he fucking blatantly grabbed the cage in order to keep himself in a upright position to get to the next position. Like that cage grab was so fucking blatant. It should have definitely been a position change at the least, or taking away a reset or point deduction based on what I saw. I mean, it did cut away really quickly, so maybe it looked worse than and I'm kind of making it more than it was. But when I watched it back, it looked just as bad. It was he grabbed the cage, it kept him upright, and it could have led to the submission situation had he secured the heel hook. So that is absolute bullshit, I say. Other than that, though, I mean, Volkov, second round, absolutely taken by him. Good navigation of what Gane was presenting to him, and the striking was good as well, including that spinning back fist that landed, which was, we talk about those spinning back fists that go the up and over ones that like look, like helicopter spinning back fists. That was one that actually landed. I was like, oh shit. I was surprised by that because usually the trajectory of those is just way off. Like they come at an angle that's not ever going to land, but that one somehow did. So second round going to him. Third round clearly to Volkov as well. So even if you give Volkov that first round, good on you. I think it's questionable at the very least, but solid second and third rounds going to Volkov. Gane was so fucking gassed. He knew he lost. There was no reason to, like, there was nothing that even he could latch onto. He's grasping at straws, speculating on what could have possibly led to the decision going in his favor. So come on, man.
I think what's crucial to note is Surreal Gone, and this is something little. This is where you got to pay attention. Surreal Gone thought that he was a big enough name that he could walk out the cage without them talking to him. He was like, "No, I'm good. Like I don't need, I'm not gonna talk." Like because obviously he knows he lost and his foot hurt or whatever. They made his ass get back in there. Like, brother, you are not big enough to fucking sit here and think that you run shit. Like, you get the fuck back in there. You go make your post fight speak, talk whatever French shit you want, and then you get out the cage. You don't interrupt the promotion by doing weird shit. You are not somebody special. So I just wanted to note that.
Well, and I also love that Joe Rogan like interrogated him when he got back in there. He's like, "Why'd you leave?" No, but
Yeah.
like, why did you leave? Why did? What was that about? Like, it's like he really wanted to like because he asked him like twice. It's like he really wanted like, yeah, I lost, bro.
Joe Rogan, he won, was out of pocket saying some stuff. We'll get to the one later about the champ, which was really funny. And then he also was giving everybody the time of day at like, the last one. Like, all right, come on, Joe, Bisping gives the little and walk away. You gotta learn. But that's why we love Joe. He gives the little extra little love taps on the mic.
Fair. But yeah, so I mean, as far as this goes, yeah, I would say that this was a pretty clear actual robbery on this one. As you had mentioned, Dana was telling Volkov after the fight, "You got robbed. Everybody saw it. That was bullshit." Thought that was kind of funny. Dana was telling it to the translator, but Volkov was like, "No, I understand what bullshit
Yeah,
means."
yeah, I get it. Yeah, I get
Yeah,
it, bro. I got fucked. I mean, I heard him. I mean, I get it. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, they'll figure out some way to make it right for him. They're saying, yeah, and look, you had mentioned it as well. Gon did break his toes early in the fight. The X-rays did come out after the fact. The toes were broken, so something to be said there. But that does not excuse the absolutely poor job from the judges on this one. And I wanted to also shout out to the Based Goddess, who had posted about this a while back and then brought it back around for this. And they talked about it on commentary. I think she clipped the
Yeah.
commentary. This one judge, Adelaide Bird is her name. I guess that she had a very controversial decision in the one of the Canelo Alvarez versus Triple G fights. Hadn't judged since then, and then comes back with this bullshit. This is a person who does not have any place judging fights. Like, this person, we talk about like ways to improve judging and anything commission related, and of course, I take that stuff seriously. I pay pretty close attention to it. This is a pretty easy one. Get her out of there.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. It's really crazy to me that we still have shit like this. But like I said, back to the earlier fight, at least it was consistent. But it does make you wonder, like, why do you have these random judges on high like profile fights? Like, this is like a number one contender ish, not really, but moving up towards the higher ranks type of fight. Why are you giving the bitch whose only other track record is some random Canelo fight that she also fucked up? Like, that's the only times that we've talked about her. Like, there's the only two instances. Why is she here? So I don't know.
Yeah, well, and that being a very high profile fight in and of itself too. So I mean, not,
Exactly.
not exactly random, but yeah, no, and I think that to cap this one off too, this is a good thing to note here. What Toby's bringing up, it is sad that people aren't talking about how much Volkov improved over the first fight with Cyril Gane. Yeah, if he had gotten the win, that would be the conversation, and that's also another unfortunate part of this whole thing because he did look very much improved. Going into this, that was my initial gut. I went against my gut because early on, if you go back to some of the earlier streams, I mean, it's random placement now. I don't remember where I had said it, but it was on stream at some point. I was like, yeah, my gut's telling me that Volkov's going to win that fight. And people were saying, oh, well, this is a rematch. He already lost to Gane. I was like, oh, well, I mean, he's coming off the Pavlovich win. Commentary was saying maybe a little bit of a renewed energy out of him, a little bit of a chip on his shoulder now based on that win. I mean, I think that it showed. And had he actually gotten the victory that he so well deserved, the conversation would be entirely different. So
I also want to make the point and I've been saying this, and I kind of been joking about it. It's really kind of just me talking shit. But John Jones, he breaks his toes, and he goes on to win belts. Surreal Gone breaks his toes. He goes on to become the McDonald's employee. So that's all I'm saying. Is like he's just not really built for it. Like we've always questioned his commitment to the sport and like what he's willing to do to be great. Clearly not that much. I know he got the win, but he knows he didn't get it. And it's just, you got to be willing to endure if you want to be that great. Like John Jones broke his arm in one of the fucking fights. He still went on to win. I think Surreal Gone breaks his arm. He's not even going to get there. He's tapping. So it's just different mindsets.
Yeah, for sure. And that is a good point to bring up. We had mentioned about the commitment to the sport, and it's hard to say that it's still there for him. I mean, one more fight, come back and turn it all around. And what I had said on the watch along when we were discussing that point is it's like, well, if he's winning his fights, then maybe it doesn't matter. A fight like this certainly continues to call it into question. So you really need to either turn it around for your own sake or make the hard call, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
So, all right. But yeah, we'll see what they do to make it right for Volkov. That's going to be, I guess, somewhat interesting, right?
Yeah, but Dana, he does his thing. It'll be a
Yeah, I'll
short
figure
notice
it.
fight. That's what he means, I think, is that's normally, in my opinion, what he gets. He'll be like, oh, we'll make it up to him, and then he keeps him in like and keeps him in his pocket. So when that fight falls out, boom, Volkov goes in.
Yeah, that doesn't sound too far off. All right, well, let's move on to the co-main event here. This is Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Gary. I think that the general consensus of this fight is pretty well correct. 3-2 Shavkat seemed about right to me. A little bit of excitement in the fifth round, perhaps, but overall, not necessarily the fight that I guess some people were hoping it to be. What do you think of this one?
I think exactly that. I think this is, again, when you have great fighters, they can't have great performances all the time against each other. So you get some neutralizing, basically whole rounds. Like this fight really didn't have much to offer up until one, Ian Gary's shorts were ripped from Shavkat's hand being in his ass. That was part of it. Two, until that fourth round, at the end of the fourth round in the corner, Ian Gary's corner said, we're down. Like, we're not going to win. Like, you have to finish it. And you know what happened? Ian Gary almost fucking finished it. Almost finished the dude who's never been finished. Had him in a position. Some people say Shavkat wasn't going to tap. Listen, it looked pretty deep to me. I'm not the one to say it. I know he probably wouldn't have tapped specifically, but he almost looked like he was about to get finished. And Ian Gary not only did that in the grappling against somebody who's a grappler, he is a striker and was able to do that. Like, he actually impressed me a lot with that grappling exchange. He didn't finish it, but damn, was it as close as it could be. Maybe it's the vegan strength. I'm not saying too much, but it was a good performance.
No, I agree. It was really, it felt like one of the "you've never seen Habib in this position ever" memes coming to life, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely have that in the notes, man. Ian Gary's wrestling and grappling is a lot better than I gave him credit for based on the MVP fight, man. He really does hold his own on the ground, and that's certainly a big takeaway from this because, of course, we'll get to the awkward Bilal encounter a little bit farther down, but that's the question here. Of course, is this is essentially a number one contender fight. How are these guys going to stack up against Bilal? I mean, I think that based on that, a lot of people were automatically counting Ian Gary out. As far as the wrestling grappling goes, and he showed that he's pretty proficient there. So I give him a lot of credit for that. Having Shavkat, who certainly had never been in anywhere near as deep water as that before, definitely took him there. That's really impressive.
I will say this also is Ian Gary, one, he did show that he is game. Like, he is about it. I do respect that. Taking on the undefeated dude, not a lot of people will. And I also will say that he's a very zesty fighter. I don't know why he just looks like it when in his stand-up he just looks something's a little off. But and then also when he does the body triangle when they're in full guard.
Yeah.
Little questionable. I don't know if you also saw this moment. So we had the body triangle, but then he also had his other leg wrapped in front of him at one point. So he had both of his legs like wrapped around Shavkat's way. It was so weird. I don't know who taught him that. And he tried to like leverage his way up like in maneuver. It just like it was a stupid. But I was like thinking, I was like, is Ian Gary stupid? Like I remember saying this on stream. Like, does he know that he has himself in a body triangle on both sides? Like I'm confused here. And then he tried to do something and it didn't fucking work. And I was like, okay, I'm not the stupid one at least. Yeah.
No, yeah, and who was it there? I'm trying to think on the fly. It's escaping me, but we saw recently somebody else who was doing the body triangle from that position as well, and it was weird then too. I think it was somebody on Noche, if I'm not mistaken, but I might be wrong about that. But it's yeah, it's kind of an odd thing because what's the advantage there? But either way, I mean, look, yeah, I guess it kept him from any possible positioning for ground and pound. Perhaps there's some justification. I don't know. Either way, he was able to get the the more effective grappling going a little bit later on. But I think that the big issue with this fight and why it was yes, I was okay with this fight personally. Just putting that out there. I think a lot of people were slightly underwhelmed with this one. I thought that it was a pretty competitive fight and one that I didn't really have too much of a problem with the way that it was paced and how they were going about it. But I do think that the striking on both sides was being respected, which is why you ended up in these prolonged clinch situations. So it was maybe a little bit too much respect going on that way. I would have liked to have seen someone really pull away with it in that regard, similar to what I had said about the Aljo and Movsar fight. The one thing as far as striking goes that was standout was that Ian Gary's kicks are very fast and very clean, man. I mean, he does know how to accurately place a kick, both high and mid. I mean, he was going to the head quickly and going to the body quickly, and that was very impressive. But that really was the full extent of the striking for the most part. A couple, spare a couple of exchanges because I think both of these guys knew that they didn't want to be in firefights that way.
I think at the time I was really hoping they pulled some BS and gave this a draw. Like so, both of them would still be undefeated technically. I thought that would have been really funny. But I do think after it's all said and done, Ian Gary, like, okay, so you compare him to Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley can't get on the mic and talk shit the same now because we know he's a fucking coward. So Ian Gary, he still has some talking points. Like, I faced a dude that nobody would. I took him to decision. I don't get finished. Like, I still have never been finished is a good talking point kind of deal. Um, and unfortunately, like, it kind of takes down Shavkat's aura a little bit. Like he almost did get finished. Like Ian Gary, not necessarily did. Like I know he lost, but there was never a time where I was like, oh my god, Ian Gary's like about to fucking lose. Like at least I don't remember it personally. There was one, and I think he did it twice. Shavkat threw this fucking wheel kick. Holy shit, this dude can throw a spin kick out his ass. And I don't know where he gets it from or why he doesn't set it up more. Go to Muslim Salikov's camp and you gonna be killer, man. Like fuck.
Yeah, no, I know the one you're talking about too, and I thought the same thing. I said it on the watch along. I'm like, damn, if that had connected, that would have been deadly. But no, to your point, I mean, yeah, how do either of these guys fare against Bilal? It does raise some concerns about Shavkat, who I had said coming into this fight, I really did believe full-heartedly that he was next up. This does kind of take the aura down slightly, I would say. I think that that's pretty accurate. He certainly did not look like the world ender that he had looked like in every single one of his UFC fights leading up to this one. So, him versus Bilal is kind of going to be the $1 million question now going into it. And I would suspect that that's the fight to make, right? Of course, we had that very, very awkward post-fight showdown, possibly the most awkward one of all time with Bilal when Joe Rogan started it off as you alluded to. Security does not know that he's the champ. That is
They
an
didn't
iconic
remember
line.
the name, man.
Yo, that is iconic. The crowd is booing like crazy. Awkward handshakes. It had it all. This was
Bro, they all went for different hands. Like you don't actually when you watch it, you know that something didn't click right there. But then when you look at the picture, it's really a meme. Like, bro, they all just did not understand what was happening. And oh my gosh, yeah, they didn't remember the name, man. Shout out to Bilal. You really tried, but nobody does. And I don't
yeah.
blame him either. he just hopped out the crowd in like a tan jumpsuit. Like he just looked like some dude to me too. Like shit, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it was funny though too because this was the opportunity that Bilal would have had. He has the belt. He's on an open platform. You know he's getting the mic. Like this is your time to really shine with some next level turn the crowd in your favor kind of trash talk, and he just fumbled it so badly as always, as expected from Bilal. This guy cannot save himself from the fate of being disliked by the fans. It's really something else when it comes to Bilal. I talked about it in the Yama episode after he won the belt, how it's like I just don't think that there is anything that he can do to win favor with anybody. You see it most especially in the fact that as a Muslim fighter, Muslims don't fuck with him. Like there is nobody.
Yeah, his best friend in camp is Juliana Pena. There's a reason. So
That's telling, yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, as far as like the real deal of it goes, how they stack up, I mean, I do think that it's going to be a big problem for Shavkat now. I mean, Bilal, you love him, hate him, however the hell you feel about him, the guy knows how to win fights, and I mean, I think that you'd mentioned Sean O'Malley there. I think it's a little out of pocket to call him a coward, but
oh
that
yeah,
aside,
my bad, sugar. No, it's all fine.
but that aside, though, I mean, like the way that fight played out with Marab, I think that Marab and Bilal, there's a lot of parallels there, as far as like the way that they handle fights and how they control fights. And when it comes to the fight with Shavkat, I mean, I think that Bilal is a guy who's going to be able to get his game plan off a lot more quickly and effectively based on the way that Shavkat at least started this fight. Could he have some success later on in a fight? Maybe. I mean, it just really depends on how Bilal navigates. But I mean, just going off of that performance specifically, and then compared to all of his previous opponents who he was so dominant against, I think that there's going to be a pretty hard time waiting for him in that title shot.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess the last thing I did want to mention is that I think that for all of the uh, craziness that surrounds Ian Gary in his personal life, all of that kind of stuff, I thought that he handled this loss very well. We had talked about a couple of guys who handled losses pretty well because, the headline had read for in a couple of places, oh, Ian Gary didn't think that he lost or whatever. That's not really what he said. What he said is that that he didn't like really lose like ground, that he essentially, even if he didn't win the fight, went to the got Shavkat in the most compromised position he'd ever been in, that he didn't feel that he really like regressed in career wise. That kind of stuff was basically the gist of what he was saying. So I don't think it was a delusional Ian Gary statement in this post fight when he was talking about it. I thought he actually assessed the situation pretty maturely, and he was pretty mature leading into this fight as well in the pre-fight press conference too. So I got to give Ian Gary credit where he deserves it.
Yeah, 100%. I do respect the kid still. Like I liked him going into it. I wasn't somebody who was big into hating Ian Gary because it's really about the fight game at the end of the day. Like he can do whatever the fuck he wants as long as he looks good in the cage.
Sure
And
thing.
he looked fine. He obviously lost. Like I think again, I agreed with his corner. Like it was very clear the rounds that he lost. He maybe won one of them up until that point, I think is what it was, 3-1. But yeah, that fifth round, he really showed the urgency, and
Sure.
he didn't show that against Neil Magny, and that was really that was my main criticism. It's like you didn't show that you wanted this fight over, that you wanted to be solidified as victorious now. He wanted to win this fight, and I respect it. That's a dude that not a lot of people want to fight in general, and that's even just going in there thinking you're going to lose. Like Ian Gary went in with confidence and the ability, and kind of backed up a lot of stuff, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that as well. I think so. And I'm certainly one to laugh at Ian Gary when it is appropriate, but in this one, I think it was a good navigation and a good fight overall. And also, one thing that he did very smartly in this fight was leave his wife at home.
Yeah, yeah. No, oh my gosh, I'm trying to think of the funniest thing ever. I remember I said it on the night. Shit,
Oh,
it was
was it with the phone call?
It might have been something about a phone call, but it was something about his child's ex-husband's something like that. Man, it was really fucking funny. The fucking wife. Oh man, it was a funny fucking thing. But I forget it. Either way, moving on.
All right. Yeah. Well, very briefly, because since I brought it up, there was a point on commentary where they had said that when he got the call to fight Shavkat, because of course he was scheduled to fight Joaquin Buckley originally, when he got the call, that his wife picked up the phone and handed the phone to him or whatever. And I was like, of
Nice.
course. Yeah, of course it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's the only one that picks up the phone in that house. Ian Gary's not allowed. But
Yeah, no,
anyway.
she probably does have control over it. It's in her purse at all times.
Legit. But all right, let's leave the leave lion dogs lying for that one. Let's move on to the main event here. Alexandre Pantoja versus Kai Asakura. Welcome to the UFC, Kai Asakura. I mean, how about that finish there of this guy who was supposed to be this rising star?
Yeah, I mean, I give him credit. He did have the moments that I figured he would. I figured he'd have a couple, lights, camera, action type of shots. And he did. He threw some funny, not funny, but he threw some interesting techniques. Like his flying knees were interesting close because they were catching Pantoja right in the body. And that initially I thought like, ooh, that looked like it kind of like he started, bringing his arms a little lower. So Pantoja, he kind of I'm not gonna say he respected it because he clearly just kept walking through him like he does with everybody. But I think that's just a Pantoja thing because you could tell that he physically respected it, but he's still gonna just like walk you down like a madman. But Kaya Sakura, the grappling's just not enough. I knew Pantoja would just maul him at the end of the day. Once he got him on the ground, it was over.
Yeah, I mean, and to your credit, you pretty much called this fight 100% in the predictions. This went as expected in that regard. Yeah, I agree, though. I mean, the knees were certainly something that you could see why he had a little aura surrounding him. Of course, the rising star thing was a little bit of a play on words. He's a two-time Ryzen champion, but the knees definitely were setting him apart early on. I thought that it was pretty ballsy of him to be going for such flashy stuff straight out of the gate against a champion, but he was landing one or two of them. So I was like, okay, I mean, that's not nothing. Pantoja, of course, eats the flying knee like he's rolling out of bed, having his morning breakfast. Dropped Asakura, sort of. I didn't know if it was a stumble or if it was a legitimate drop, but the commentary was gassing it like he had gotten dropped. So I was like, okay, I mean, I'll count it as a drop if that's actually what it was. Hard to tell it from my point of view, but drops him, and then Pantoja ends up eating a head kick as well, but also landed some heavy shots too. So it was a really nice first round. I thought it was a good competitive. Of course, flyweight at that level, it's going to be extremely fast, lightning fast, as Joe Rogan said. I thought that was accurate. And then as you were mentioning, I mean, Pantoja with the grappling into the wrestling into the grappling. I mean, goes for the backpack, doesn't get the full on backpack, sort of had the side, like a half backpack, so to speak. He was kind of hanging on the one leg to the side, but really nicely used his body weight to get Asakura off of his own base and off of the cage at the same time. Jumps his back for the takedown. After that, it's easy RNC there. I mean,
Yeah, I remember when the fight started, and I'm very grateful that I say stuff like this because it makes me look really good at the end of the day. When Pantoja walks to the cage and I say stuff like this looks like another day at the office for him. And then he comes in and he subs him in round two. And like, I mean, and then goes on the mic and says, I'm the GOAT. Like you can't really say too much about it. Like he really is just the blue collar champion. And I love it. I love this dude.
I agree. I mean, and that is, I think, one of the biggest takeaways from this fight, in my opinion, is put some motherfucking respect on Pantoja's name at this point, dude. This is one of the like like these stats are crazy. He has beaten 9 of the top 10. 9 of the top 10 in his division have already been defeated by him, and he has never been finished. This guy deserves to be looked at in the same light as any champion. And just because he's fighting at a smaller weight, he's not getting that respect. The time is now, everybody. Put some fucking respect on Alexandre Pantoja's name.
To be honest, unfortunately, I think the reality is that we will put less respect on his name as time goes on, because that's exactly what they do to people who are great at this level. They'll question the level of competition. Anderson Silva, there's no like reason at the time that people would even question the level of competition that he was facing. Those were the top of the game. Like those were the best of the best, and he made it look easy. Pantoja is the competition that is here is all that he can do. He can't make them be better, but he can only beat them, and that's exactly what he's done.
Well, I mean, and that's a fair point. I do agree with that. I think though that like maybe if you're not putting him in like the highest pantheon of like the goats of all time kind of thing, the greatest of all time, like on like an Anderson Silva level, you should still at least respect him in the current climate of the sport now. You know what I mean? Like just within who you currently have as champions. I mean, I would, in my opinion, based on the dominance that he has had. Now, granted, what you're saying about the level of competition is as it is, but we are saying week after week on this very show that the makeup of the division is changing pretty rapidly. You're starting to get some new finishers in here. He's going to have more guys to challenge, and hopefully will give him the challenge to make him live up to that credential. But either fucking which way, in my estimation, I would certainly put as much respect on Alexandre Pantoja easily as I would put on Dricus du Plessis.
Oh, 100%. I think that's one of it. I think I genuinely don't see any reason not to like Pantoja. Like I think that's just something that people like when people are mad and they'll be like they're talking down on me. It's like who's they? Like I think that's one of those things.
Casuals.
Yeah.
It's casuals. That's if not putting respect on Alexandre Pantoja's name is a casual take now, folks. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
I did think that if you were looking for a sound bite, he certainly had a somewhat spicy one. You think some Japan's gonna come here and take my belt? No.
Yeah, that dude. And I love him. I love him for it. Like I can't tell you any other way to say it. Like that's exactly what I wanted to hear.
Yeah. And I mean, and I guess the last point about when it comes to the GOAT part of the conversation, to his credit, did call out DJ. DJ promptly says, "No thanks, I'm retired and staying retired." So unfortunate in that regard, but that is the right thing to do.
Do you think because just a couple, just up until Stipe and John Jones fought, everybody was complaining of like, oh my God, this dude's reaching into retirement for people. Like, what? Are we serious?
A
So,
slightly different, I would say though, because DJ just retired. I mean,
I mean,
DJ's retired this year, if I'm not mistaken, right? I mean,
I think probably, but I mean,
yeah,
he's
I'm
been
pretty
retired.
sure.
He's been out of the UFC for a little bit. So if you want to count it apples to oranges in
Uh,
some manner, you could
All
do that.
right, all right, fair enough. I'll give you that as a good counterpoint. But I do think that like, at least as far as perceptionally goes, if people are still consider, because I mean, a lot of people have DJ in their like Mount Rushmore of MMA fighters. So like, I think that if you're going to try to change the perception as you were just laying out there of how people are looking at him, then yeah, I mean, you got to shoot for as high as you can get. And if he is already as high as he is going to get based on being as dominant as he is in the organization, then unless they find somebody in the fucking, rurals of the Congo now, I mean, they literally brought a guy in from another organization to challenge him because of what he's done in the UFC, then where else do you go? He's created his own ceiling.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm really excited to see what's next because clearly they don't know. They just have to make it up on the fly at this point, and
Yeah.
it's gonna be really fun.
Yeah, I mean, and we are going to have to see what ends up being next because it's like, we're getting into that same situation like heavyweight, as you kind of referenced there, where it's going to be kind of the merry-go-round. I mean, you got Royval, you've got possibly Moreno if he, wants to be back in the conversation. He just got a really, really nice win himself there. So that's potentially there again. I mean, do we want that fight another time? It'd be kind of crazy to think, but what else are you going to do at some point if these are the guys that do it? What I really think needs to happen is just some of these guys that we've been talking about, some of these new killers need to get their wins quickly and work their way into that conversation quicker than later.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that's pretty much the deal there. Nice win for Alexandre Pantoja to retain his belt. And that is UFC 310, Pantoja versus Asakura. Overall impressions of the event, post talking
I
about it.
Yeah, I loved it, man. I mean, I really think I get spoiled when Chase Hooper, Josh Van, Alexandre Pantoja are all on a card together, and then they all walk away victorious.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. I mean, it's there's a there was a lot to like about this card. You know, questionable judging stuff aside, I thought that there was a lot of really solid performances and a couple of really good fights on here too. I mean, this was a really nice way to close out the pay-per-view for the year. I mean, you know, we've got one more event before 2024 is over, and we'll take a look at that here in a second. So, yeah, as far as 310 went, I was very satisfied with it. I thought it was a fun time to be had.
100%.
So, all right. Well, the next event for next week, taking a quick look at this, I want to reiterate, I mentioned it last week, but I will say it here again. This is UFC Fight Night Covington versus Buckley. This is happening in Tampa, Florida, and I will be in attendance for this event. So, generally, we do watch alongs, myself and Vitz King. We will not be doing a live watch along, but either myself and Vitz King together or me solo, we'll be doing a watch along on the following Sunday, and I will give you all of the inside perspective having been in attendance at this show. But looking forward to it, and there are a couple of decent fights, not necessarily a super crazy high point, especially after 310 that we just broke down, but a couple of decent ones, and I think it'll be a good time overall. Let's take a couple of looks at some of these fights here. What do you think about this main event?
Main event sucks because Colby is probably going to be boring, but Buckley, if he wins, and Buckley is he's up and down on the public radar, like if people like him or hate him kind of deal. But if you beat Colby Covington and you knock him out, people will like you. So
For sure. I mean, most definitely that. And I think anything perceptionally when it comes to Buckley really is just of his own design. I think he's stuck his foot in his mouth a couple of times. That's all stuff that I think is somewhat easily fixable. You know, I mean, yeah, you had a dumb call out. That's not going to really matter in the grand scheme of things that you keep winning your fights. And as you said, I mean, if you do it against Colby Covington, who I think a lot of the world is actively looking to have, taken out of the equation altogether, that's definitely going to be a big highlight for him. So, yeah, you know, I will be out there rooting for Joaquin Buckley 100% and looking forward to seeing if anything comes out of Colby at all, really. I mean, because I don't think that there's much to be had there anymore. But this really is actually, I think, a good test for Joaquin Buckley to, show that he is like past the Colby like hump, you know what I mean? Like he can get around that because Colby is his own version of a ceiling, I would say. Your typing is very loud, homie.
oh, I'm so sorry. All right. Yeah, so I mean, this card really there's not too much that I even think that I'm excited for. Like it's really just there's some things that are thrown in together. Like Manel Cap and Bruno Silva, I think will be a decent one. The co-main event being Cub Swanson and Billy Q is kind of fair. It's kind of weird, but
Well,
I
of
don't know.
course, we had Amanda Hebos and Mackenzie Dern canceled on us from this card. This card has already gone through multiple cancellations, fights being pulled, really. I mean, that fight is still going on. It's just been moved to a different card. So now,
Exactly.
which really does kind of suck. I was looking forward to that one. Of course, we got robbed of Ian Gary in the main event. So it's just sort of a broken card to begin with. It doesn't look like they're really going to be doing anything else to fix that. I'm riding with this fight because I am a huge Cub Swanson fan. Another one of the fighters I would say is among my favorites. So against Billy Quarantillo, this should be a pretty easy win for Cub. Although they have him as an underdog, which is just crazy. I mean, based on his more recent performances, Cub is certainly on the way past the tail end of his career. He got gifted his last victory, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, he should be able to beat Billy Q, but it is questionable just based on where he's at in his career. Manel Kopp versus Bruno Silva, I think, is a great fight and potentially could be anyway. I mean, Bruno Silva, we had referenced a little bit in the Durden versus Van
Mhm.
fight. Of course, he able to finish Cody Durden. So obviously power there. Talk about flyweights with knockout power. There's one. Manel Kopp, of course, had the strange fight and fight lead up and everything with Muhammad Mokaev, and Muhammad Mokaev is out of here, out of the UFC. So I mean, that's a whole lot going on with him. There's always seems to be something with Manel Kopp. So all that aside, he's entertaining enough in the cage. I'm looking forward to that one. Petrino.
I
Yeah,
will
no,
add.
yeah, go
I
ahead,
will
Ken.
add. So, Bruno is actually kind of a dark horse right now. He's somebody that is taking a pretty big leap, pretty fast. Like if he beats Manel, that's a really big. Like that's two fights that got you right in the picture of some implications. Like you might even get a title shot here soon if you beat Manel right here. So
Could be. I mean, do it in decisive fashion.
yeah,
And because, yeah, I mean, like with the whole situation with Mokaev, being somebody that people were thinking could have been in the title picture himself before he kind of screwed up his trajectory. I mean, now it's a little bit of an open season at that level. So either Manel Kopp or Bruno Silva could, theoretically get themselves into a decent position with a win here.
yeah. And then so going down to the next fight, this is just an opponent swap. This is the opponents for Alex Smith, and then the opponent for the most recent matchup for Anthony Smith, excuse me, and then the most recent matchup for Dominic Reyes. These are just swapping opponents here for this matchup, and
Yep.
I don't hate this one. I don't know what's exactly going to happen. All I know is Vitor Petrino can't defend a submission for his life. So if Dustin Jacoby decides to even think about it, maybe it works. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean this is a fight that Vitor Petrino really really needs to win. I mean not I mean he's 11-1, so it's not like he,
Yeah,
it's like as far as records go, but I mean after getting roundly defeated by Anthony Smith in a fight that was supposed to graduate him to the upper echelon, you have a lot of course correcting to do, and Dustin Jacoby is a fine person to be able to do that against. So if you want to be taken, seriously, more so than just being a member of the, kind of below rankings pack, this is a fight to win for sure for him.
yeah. And then these next two, or I'm sorry, this next one I don't really care about, but the one below it, my boy Navajo.
Yes, Navajo Sterling, of course. I mean, I did want to say at least that
Oh, okay, yeah, go ahead.
Adrian Yanez, I mean, this is another fight that, like, I mean, he's been slightly spotty, but like should be able to win this one. I mean, Marcos is undefeated though, so there is an O on the line. So we'll
Mhm.
see if
Oh,
that
I
can
actually didn't
maintain.
even notice that.
Yeah, so I
I
mean,
might have thought that was an 8. My bad.
that is a 0, my man. I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that I wasn't going crazy. But no, yeah. So I mean, I think that this like could be a nice step up for Marcos, who is the favorite in that fight. So I mean, Peru has been graduating a couple of pretty good fighters lately. There is some potential for that to be a decent one.
Yeah,
But
I'm trying to think who the last person I saw Yanez fight, but I don't think, yeah, because he lost the last, so he lost to Rob Font and Jonathan Martinez, but that wouldn't have been when I was watching. So interesting. I don't think I've seen too much of him, but Navajo Sterling, excuse me, my guy, that should be fun for you because we just saw him on the Contender Series just this year. But he is 5-0. He's very green, as they say. If Tuco, if he somehow is able to wrestle, it might be interesting for Navajo, but I think Navajo probably just knocks him out clean.
I'm hoping so because I really like Navajo Sterling on the Contender Series. I quite enjoyed his fight, and Tokos kind of had like a bunch of low IQ moves. To my recollection, that's kind of what sticks out in my mind when it comes to him. He was the victim of Sadabusi, I believe, and right, yeah, I think that's yeah, it was C, right? Yeah. It was wasn't it?
Omar.
Omar
Omar.
C. Yeah. No. Sadabu C is PFL. That's okay. I was like, yeah. Wait a second. But yes. So yeah, I mean, Tuco Toko said, just kind of fought like a bit of a dummy. So hopefully, if he like doesn't do that, then there may be some competition here. But it would be nice to see Navajo Sterling get a nice knockout for his first fight in the organization. Get a new picture of him outside of the blue Contender
Yeah,
Series gloves.
exactly. The black and white photo watch. I still don't understand how that happens. Why do they end up black and white when they're not in the UFC? Like,
To make you know that they are not UFC caliber yet.
yeah, I guess, man. I
I
guess.
guess. But yeah. Moving on though, Michael Johnson, I'm a fan from he's an old school guy, very 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 checkered, but against Ottoman Azaitar, I think that there's some good potential for him to get another nice win. I saw him win in Orlando a couple years ago, so happy to see him fight again. It would be kind of nice if they varied the fighters a little bit, because now I mean I missed the Jacksonville one, but as far as like north of like South Florida goes, I've been to Tampa and to Orlando, and now I'm going to have seen now, after seeing this Tampa show, Cub Swanson twice and Michael Johnson twice. So it's like maybe vary it a little bit more for the Florida fans, but I'm not mad at it because I'm a fan of Michael Johnson.
Honestly, I think looking down towards the beginning of the card, this is where the greatness is. You got Joel Alvarez versus Jakar Close. Jakar Close, we've talked about him before. He's only lost twice. He's on a win streak. He just doesn't fight that often. But he is a big dog right here. He's on a win streak, guys. But Joel Alvarez is pretty fucking good. So
yeah. No, I mean, this is the fight I'm actually looking forward to the most, pretty much on this card at this point, to be perfectly honest. I'd say that I'm slightly looking forward to this fight more than even the main event. Like, unless the main event really just actually turns out to be a banger, which it potentially could be. But I mean, I'm just very worried in the main event that Colby's just going to clinch and tie Buckley up a whole bunch and not let him get any striking off. So hopefully that doesn't happen. But this fight right here has the potential to be very competitive. And Joel Alvarez is a fucking murderer, man. I mean, the way that he picked apart Elvis Brenner will not soon leave my mind.
Yep. And so the one below that, you got Sean Woodson and Fernando Padilla. That one will be pretty good. They actually have Sean Woodson as a favorite, which he is a decision merchant and he does know how to win. But if Fernando catches him, I mean, anything's possible. Not everybody's made a kryptonite.
For sure. I mean, when it comes to Woodson, I need to see a little bit more like definitively impressive wins for me to like come around to him a little bit more. But he does his thing. I mean, I'm not hating on the fight, so I think that there's decent potential in that one, perhaps. Moving on
Miles
down,
Johns and Felipe Lima. I mean, Felipe Lima is a pretty decent prospect. I'm pretty sure he just stepped in on short notice against Naimov, right? And he subbed him.
That is
so,
true.
And
yes,
that was
him.
That was debut too. So
yeah.
Pretty
I mean,
big jump actually. For Miles Johns.
Hopefully he can get a decent win over Miles Johns, because I mean, like, if he's able to do that and keep that consistent, then Miles Johns is a good person to be able to really test that.
Yeah, that's a very experienced person though, so it'll be tough for Felipe. His second fight versus somebody who's been here for a couple years. This will be interesting.
Yeah, 15-2 versus 13-1. That's obviously guys who are kind of neck and neck to maintain trajectory.
Yeah, true.
I mean, Miranda Maverick versus Jamie Lynn Horth. Horth just fought, so I really don't know why she's back that quickly. I mean, her last fight was not like a world-ending performance, but she's back against Miranda Maverick. Maverick, decent, I would say. I think
you got to remember last fight she showed up jacked. Miranda Maverick was ridiculously built in her last fight. She looked like she put in so much work. So remember that.
Yeah. I mean, she's a super heavy favorite in this fight. So, theoretically, if she comes in with the same physique and level of intensity, this should be pretty okay for her. But, maybe Horth is trying to make a statement. I can come in and do it on short notice and stay active, trying to, build up a little bit of a momentum for herself. She's newlywed. So, yeah, exactly. She just got married. She's got bills.
Isn't that one crazy way to afford a wedding? Like, man, we got to pay bills. Like, I might as well just go fight.
Yeah, take the fight. I mean, I think that was what that last one might have been on short notice, if I'm not mistaken. So, she was like in Vegas for her honeymoon and then just ended up fighting. So moving on, just Ramon Taveras. I did an entire video about the crazy situation with Ramon Taveras nearly being murdered right here in the state of Florida. So hopefully he'll get a nice win to get him out of Duval County if that's what he needs, him and his family. I hope that happens for him, because that situation was pretty scary. He's going up against Davey Grant, who I've never been super high on, so I think that there is plenty of potential for him to win that fight. And Josephine Knutson, I'd like to see get a nice win. She is from Sweden.
And I think that one will be a fun one to open up. I mean, you got a Venezuelan Queen Piera. I've talked about her and her twin before. I forget what her name is at the time, but Piera's a really good one. That might be a good, decent dog, but Josephine, we've talked about how impressive she is on the feet. She's pretty solid.
For sure, most definitely. So, yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, and Josephine, of course, is undefeated as well. So, trying to keep her O going. So yeah, I think that this is an okay card. I mean, I've been seeing the criticisms of it. It's super mid, blah blah blah, this and that. Sometimes, as we've seen throughout this year, even that cards like this can deliver in a real way. So I'm hoping that that is the case and is not a complete dud, considering that it is my homie who I'm going with first time seeing a live event. So I'd really like it to be a good one, at least for him.
I also want to note just one last thing on that
Yeah,
Piera fight. She got
sure.
disqualified in her last fight from that headbutt.
Oh, she
Remember?
was the headbutt girl. Yeah.
Yeah,
She's got a lot to
against the really buff chick who surprisingly couldn't take a punch. She just like gave up and like took the DQ win. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. She's got a lot of ground to regain after that ridiculous disqualification. I mean, that situation with that one was that she was headbutting and was warned about it and then went back and did it again.
Yeah.
There's
Yep.
no excuse for that. So, yeah, hopefully she's learned her lesson, maybe better understanding and comprehension of the rule set for her. Fight a little bit smarter, but she's got a big test in Josephine Knutson. So we'll see what happens.
Yep. I like this card. It's all right. I talked
Yeah.
after we ran down. It's not that bad.
It's not bad. I think it'll be a fun time. So we will, of course, be back next Monday to break it all down. And I will not be watching along live. As I said, I will be at the event live. I'll be doing a watch along the following Sunday, so you can keep an eye out for that. But Chase, you'll be watching live, and I know that you can tell them where they can find you to see you do that.
They will find me on youtube.com/@CPSmalls, and I will be on Twitter, goofing around on at Creative Partin, PARTIN. And if you actually want to support the channel and reach out, I will have merchandise with the logo. Let me actually get one for you.
How about it? Yes, we did not even mention this on the show yet, and I would have been remiss if I had let it slide, so I'm glad Chase did mention it. Chase, the entrepreneur, here with some last week's fights merchandise being made.
Bam, they look like that. I know that
There
looks a
you
little
go.
backwards for you, but they are on shirts. I will have them in white. We will get black soon. And just let me know if you are a medium large or extra large. If you're not either one of those, you're going to have to wait. But you reach out, subscribe, comment, reach out on Discord, and we're going to figure out how to get you one of these.
Absolutely. And if you get one of these now, you will be among the first people in the world to have last week's fights merchandise. And that's going to be something hopefully down the line that'll be pretty cool. So I would recommend reaching out to Chase. Reach out to me too. I can get you in touch with Chase for the merchandise as well. You can find me at Yama Show on Twitter and on Instagram as well. And we will get you hooked up. So thank you to everybody who's already supporting, all the people in the Discord who are going to be getting one. We appreciate that support. And yeah, I mean, there will be a video, hopefully, praying that I can make the schedule work. But I'm trying to get a Yama episode out this week about 3:10. So keep an eye out on the channel for new content. And we will be back on Monday for another last week's fights, everybody. Cop a shirt. We'll see you next week. Take care. And as always, fight on.
Change.